When a ruthless corporate director wakes up in her employee's bed wearing nothing but his shirt, she knows her perfectly controlled life just shattered. But it wasn't an affair that brought Evelyn Hart to single father Daniel Reed's home. It was a storm, a terrified child, and one impulsive decision that will change everything. What started as an emergency rescue becomes an impossible night that forces a woman who built her empire on cold logic to choose, return to the safety of her corner office, or risk everything for a love she never planned on finding. This is their story. Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this journey, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now, let's dive in. The first thing Evelyn Hart became aware of was the wrongness of the ceiling. It wasn't her ceiling, the minimalist white expanse of her penthouse bedroom with its recessed lighting and clean architectural lines. This ceiling was textured, slightly yellowed in the corners, with a small water stain shaped vaguely like a cloud. A crack ran from the corner toward a ceiling fan that looked like it had been installed sometime in the previous decade. The second thing she noticed was the shirt. Evelyn sat up slowly, her head pounding with a dull ache that had nothing to do with alcohol and everything to do with stress and exhaustion. The fabric pooled around her thighs, a men's button-down in soft blue cotton, at least 2 sizes too large, smelling faintly of laundry detergent and something else, something clean and unfamiliar and decidedly masculine. Her suit was draped over a chair in the corner. Her heels sat primly beside it, still spotted with mud. Mud. The memory hit her like cold water. Rain hammering against windshields, flooded streets, brake lights bleeding red through the deluge, a phone call, Daniel's voice tight with panic. "I can't reach the babysitter. Mia's alone." "Oh God," Evelyn whispered to the empty room. She was in Daniel Reed's house. Daniel Reed, her senior analyst. Daniel Reed, who submitted flawless reports and never missed deadlines and stayed so far under the radar that she'd barely registered his existence until 6 months ago when she'd needed someone to run the numbers on the Meridian acquisition. Daniel Reed, whose daughter... A child's laughter echoed from somewhere below, bright and unrestrained, followed by a deeper rumble of male amusement. The sounds of a home, of life, of a world Evelyn had systematically excised from her own existence 15 years ago when she'd made partner at 30 and decided that the corner office was the only family she needed. The bathroom mirror told her exactly what she'd suspected. Last night's makeup had migrated into shadows under her eyes. Her hair, usually smoothed into a flawless chignon, had dried in waves that made her look almost human. Almost like someone who hadn't spent the last decade building a reputation for being the most brilliant and ruthless director in the Pacific Northwest Division. She found her phone on the bathroom counter, its screen dark. Dead. Of course it was dead. She'd been running on 5% when she'd made the decision that had led her here. The decision that had seemed so logical at the time. I'll drive him home. It's on my way. He's a valuable employee. It's just good business sense. Except it wasn't on her way. And it wasn't business sense. And somewhere between the office parking garage and this modest 2-bedroom house in the suburbs, Evelyn Hart had crossed a line she'd drawn in permanent marker across her entire adult life. She splashed water on her face, trying to reconstruct the sequence of events. The staff meeting had run late. She'd been presenting the Q3 restructuring plan, the plan that would save the company $8 million annually, the plan that would eliminate 47 positions, the plan that had a list of names attached to it, locked in her desk drawer, waiting for final approval. Daniel's name was on that list. Not because he was bad at his job. He was exceptional, actually, with an analytical mind that could spot patterns others missed. But he was expensive, and he had a habit of leaving exactly at 5:30 every day, which suggested a lack of commitment that didn't align with the company's culture of excellence. She hadn't known about the daughter then. Hadn't known that 5:30 wasn't about commitment. It was about daycare pickup times and homework help and bedtime routines. Hadn't known that the slight circles under Daniel's eyes weren't from late nights drinking, but from early mornings when a 6-year-old climbed into bed after nightmares. The staff meeting had ended at 7. She'd been walking to her car when she'd seen him, still at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, and something about his posture had made her pause. She'd seen Daniel present to boards and handle difficult clients with unflappable calm. She'd never seen him look afraid. The conversation had been brief. His babysitter had canceled, family emergency. He'd called every backup on his list. The storm was getting worse. He needed to get home to Mia, needed to get there now, but his car was in the shop and the buses had stopped running and, "I'll drive you," she'd heard herself say. The look on his face had been almost comical. Evelyn Hart didn't do favors. Evelyn Hart barely acknowledged the existence of her employees outside of performance reviews. Evelyn Hart certainly didn't offer rides home like some kind of corporate carpooling service. But she'd already made the offer, and Daniel's fear had been real enough that he'd swallowed whatever protests he might have had. "Thank you," he'd said simply. "I'll owe you one." She'd wanted to tell him that wasn't how it worked, that she didn't deal in favors and debts. Instead, she'd just nodded and led the way to her car. A knock on the bathroom door jolted Evelyn back to the present. "Ms. Hart?" Daniel's voice, careful and professional even through the door. "I made coffee and breakfast, if you're hungry. No pressure. I can call you a car whenever you're ready." The formality was almost painful, as if they hadn't spent the previous night in circumstances that had shattered every professional boundary between them, as if she hadn't held his terrified daughter while thunder shook the house, as if he hadn't covered them both with a blanket and whispered "thank you" in a voice that cracked with exhaustion and relief. "Coffee would be perfect," Evelyn called back, and was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I'll be down in a few minutes." "Take your time." His footsteps retreated down the hallway. Evelyn counted to 10, then opened the bathroom door. The hallway was a riot of color compared to her monochrome apartment. Children's artwork covered one wall, crayon drawings of houses and families and rainbows, each one carefully framed and labeled with dates in neat handwriting. A growth chart marked Mia's progress from age 2 to 6, little pencil lines climbing steadily upward. Photographs in mismatched frames showed Daniel and Mia at the zoo, at the beach, at birthday parties, a chronicle of a life lived fully despite obvious financial constraints. No wife in the pictures. No other adult. Just father and daughter, building a world for two. Evelyn's chest tightened with something she refused to name. She made her way down the stairs, each step taking her further into this strange, alternate reality. The house was small but impeccably maintained, worn furniture that had been chosen for comfort rather than style, books overflowing from built-in shelves. A child's backpack hung by the door next to a pair of rain boots shaped like ladybugs. The smell of coffee and bacon drew her toward the kitchen. And then the princess realized she didn't need a prince at all because she had a dragon. Mia's voice rang out with absolute conviction. The dragon was way more useful. He could fly and breathe fire, and he liked the same books she did. "That's a pretty great dragon," Daniel agreed. "But what about—" He stopped mid-sentence as Evelyn appeared in the doorway. The kitchen was bright with morning sunlight, steam rising from mugs on the counter, and Daniel Reed looked nothing like the man who sat at a desk analyzing spreadsheets 8 hours a day. He was wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt, his dark hair still damp from a shower, barefoot on the linoleum floor, comfortable in his own space in a way she'd never seen him at the office. And Mia, 6 years old with her father's dark eyes and a riot of curls pulled into a lopsided ponytail, was seated at the kitchen table in pajamas covered with stars, a half-eaten waffle in front of her. The child's eyes went wide. "You're still here." "Mia," Daniel said quietly, but Evelyn could see the question in his own expression, carefully masked behind professional courtesy. "I am," Evelyn said, because there was no point in denying the obvious. "Good morning." "Good morning." Mia bounced in her seat. "Daddy made waffles. They're really good. Better than cereal. Do you want one? You can have mine if you want. I'm kind of full anyway, and Daddy says we shouldn't waste food, so—" "Mia, breathe," Daniel interrupted gently, but there was warmth in his voice. He turned to Evelyn. "Coffee? I have regular or decaf. No fancy espresso machine, I'm afraid." "Regular is fine." Evelyn moved into the kitchen, acutely aware of how out of place she must look in her borrowed shirt and bare feet, her usual armor of designer suits and controlled perfection completely stripped away. "Thank you." Daniel poured coffee into a mug, white ceramic with "World's Okayest Dad" printed on the side, and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed briefly in the exchange, and Evelyn saw something flicker across his expression before the professional mask settled back into place. "Cream and sugar are on the table," he said. "And please, sit. I'll make you a waffle." "You don't have to. It's not trouble." It was the same tone he used in meetings when he'd made up his mind about something. Quiet, but immovable. Evelyn found herself sitting across from Mia, who was watching her with unabashed curiosity. "You work with my dad," Mia announced, as if this explained everything about the universe. "I do." "Are you his boss?" "Sort of." "Do you tell him what to do?" "Sometimes." Mia considered this, taking a bite of her waffle. "He told me you helped last night when I was scared. The storm was really loud. I thought the house was going to blow away like in The Wizard of Oz. Have you seen that movie? It's really old, but it's good. The monkeys are scary, but Dorothy is brave." The waffle maker beeped, and Daniel transferred a perfectly golden waffle onto a plate, adding butter and syrup with practiced efficiency before setting it in front of Evelyn. "Mia, maybe let Ms. Hart wake up before the full interrogation," he suggested. "I'm not interrogating," Mia protested. "I'm just talking. Mrs. Chen says I'm very good at talking. She's my teacher. She says I have a lot to say about everything." "I believe it," Evelyn said, and was rewarded with a brilliant smile. Daniel sat down with his own coffee, and for a moment the three of them existed in a strange domestic tableau that felt simultaneously foreign and oddly right. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. The waffle was perfect, crispy edges, fluffy center. Mia chattered about her dragon-loving princess while Daniel listened with the kind of focused attention Evelyn usually reserved for board presentations. This was his real life. This kitchen, this child, this carefully constructed world of waffle makers and spelling tests and bedtime stories. And last night, for reasons she still couldn't fully explain, Evelyn had stepped into it. 16 hours earlier. The rain had started as a drizzle during the 3 o'clock budget review. By 5, it was a steady drumming against the windows. By 6:30, when Daniel finally looked up from his spreadsheets, the parking lot was a shallow lake reflecting the security lights. He'd sent Mia a text. "Running late. Be home by 8. Love you." She'd sent back a string of heart emojis and a selfie of her eating mac and cheese with Mrs. Rodriguez, their neighbor who sometimes filled in when Daniel was stuck at work. He'd gone back to his analysis of the Meridian acquisition, losing himself in the numbers. This was where he felt competent, in control. Revenue projections, risk assessments, capital allocation. These were problems with clear solutions. Not like parenting, where every decision felt like a potential mistake waiting to unfold. The Q3 restructuring was brutal. He'd run the numbers 3 times, hoping he'd made an error, but the math was merciless. 47 positions, $8 million in savings. His own role was on the bubble. He could see it in the formulas, in the way his department was being evaluated against cheaper offshore alternatives. He should be worried. He should be polishing his resume and networking and preparing for the worst. Instead, he was trying to figure out how to make the case for keeping Sarah Thompson in accounting, who was 62 and 3 years from retirement and absolutely on the chopping block. Sarah, who'd shown him pictures of her grandkids and brought in cookies on Fridays and deserved better than being reduced to a line item on a cost-benefit analysis. His phone rang at 7:47. Mrs. Rodriguez. Not Mia. Daniel's stomach dropped before he even answered. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." Mrs. Rodriguez sounded genuinely distressed. "My sister, she's in the hospital. Heart attack. I have to go. I tried calling other neighbors, but everyone's either not home or can't. The storm is getting really bad, and Mia's here alone, and I feel terrible, but I have to—" "It's okay," Daniel interrupted, already shoving papers into his bag. "Go. Be with your sister. I'm leaving now." But leaving was easier said than done. His car had been making a grinding noise for 2 weeks, a noise he'd been ignoring because repairs cost money and Mia needed new shoes and the electric bill was higher than usual. This morning, the grinding had turned into a death rattle, and he'd taken the bus to work with a promise to himself that he'd deal with it this weekend. The last bus had left 20 minutes ago. He could call a car service, but the app was showing surge pricing at 3.5x normal rates, and that would blow his entire week's discretionary budget. He could call who? He'd been in Seattle for 3 years since his ex-wife had decided motherhood wasn't for her and signed away custody in exchange for minimal child support and no contact. Most of his friendships had been casualties of the divorce and the subsequent move. The neighbors he knew were either elderly or had their own kids to manage in the storm. Daniel stood in the parking garage, rain hammering the concrete, phone in hand, trying to figure out which impossible choice to make. "Everything all right?" He turned to find Evelyn Hart 30 feet away, her Audi's lights blinking as she approached. She looked exactly as she always did, perfectly tailored suit, not a hair out of place, expression neutral and assessing. He didn't know much about Evelyn Hart beyond the reputation that preceded her. Brilliant, ruthless. The woman who'd turned around 3 failing divisions in 5 years. The director who expected excellence and tolerated nothing less. She'd been in his department for 6 months, and he'd successfully maintained exactly the kind of professional distance that seemed safest with someone who had the power to end careers with a signature. Daniel stopped, unsure how much to reveal. Car trouble. And the buses stopped running. Her gaze flicked to his phone, to the weather app showing severe storm warnings. "Where do you live?" "Maple Heights." "But it's fine. I'll figure something out." "That's on my way," she lied smoothly. Her penthouse was downtown, opposite direction. "I'll drive you." For a second, Daniel just stared at her. Evelyn Hart didn't offer favors. Evelyn Hart barely acknowledged the existence of people below director level unless their work was exceptional or terrible. "Miss Hart, I couldn't ask." "You didn't ask. I offered." She was already walking toward her car. "Unless you have a better option?" He didn't, and Mia was home alone with the storm getting worse by the minute. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly. "I'll owe you one." Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or something else, but it was gone before he could identify it. The Audi's interior was exactly what he'd expected. Leather seats, subtle lighting, the faint scent of expensive perfume. Evelyn drove with the same focused efficiency she brought to everything else, navigating the flooded streets with careful precision. They were 10 minutes into the drive when Daniel's phone rang again. Mia. "Hey, Princess," he answered, forcing brightness into his voice. "I'm on my way. Are you okay?" "Daddy, the lights went out." His daughter's voice was small and scared. "And there's a really loud noise outside, and I looked out the window, and there's a tree branch on Mr. Peterson's car, and..." Thunder cracked so loud that Daniel heard it both through the phone and from outside the car. Mia shrieked, "I'm coming, baby. I promise. I'm in a car right now, and I'll be there so soon. Don't leave me alone," Mia whispered, and the fear in her voice made Daniel's chest physically hurt. "I won't. I'm right here. Can you hear me?" "Yes." "Okay. I want you to go to your room and get Patches." Patches was her stuffed rabbit, worn soft from years of love. "And then I want you to sit in the bathroom like we practiced for tornado warnings. Remember? The bathroom is the safest place." "The bathroom is dark." "That's okay. You have your nightlight, right? The one that runs on batteries?" "Yeah." "Perfect. Take Patches and your nightlight to the bathroom, and I want you to count to 100. Can you do that for me? By the time you're done counting, I'll almost be there." "Okay." Mia's voice was still shaky, but she was trying to be brave. "Daddy?" "Yeah, Princess?" "I love you." "I love you too, so much. Now go count, okay? I'll see you so soon." The call ended. Daniel realized his hands were shaking. "How far are we?" he asked. Evelyn checked the navigation. 12 minutes. But traffic is... She paused as they approached an intersection blocked by emergency vehicles. "We'll have to detour." 12 minutes became 15, then 20. The storm intensified. Evelyn drove in focused silence while Daniel tracked their progress on his phone, each minute feeling like an hour. Finally, they turned onto his street. The house looked smaller in the rain, more vulnerable. One of the shutters was hanging loose, banging against the siding. The yard was a swamp, but the lights were out. The whole street was dark, actually, which meant the power outage was widespread. "Thank you," Daniel said, already reaching for the door handle. "Really, I can't tell you how much." "I'll come in," Evelyn said. He froze. "What?" "The storm is getting worse. The roads are flooding. I'm not driving back downtown in this. She said it matter-of-factly, as if offering to spend the evening in a subordinate's home was perfectly normal. Unless that's a problem? It should be a problem. It was wildly inappropriate by any professional standard. But Daniel looked at his dark house and thought about Mia scared in the bathroom and the very real possibility that Evelyn might not make it back to her apartment safely if she left now. It's not a problem, he heard himself say. They ran through the rain to the front door, both getting soaked in the 30 seconds it took Daniel to unlock it. Inside, the house was dark and silent except for the storm. "Mia," Daniel called. "Princess, I'm home." No answer. His heart rate spiked. "Mia!" "Maybe she can't hear you over the storm," Evelyn suggested, but Daniel was already moving, taking the stairs 2 at a time to Mia's room. Empty. "Mia!" Panic now, real and sharp. "In here, Daddy." The small voice came from the bathroom. Daniel found her exactly where he'd told her to go, sitting in the bathtub with Patches clutched to her chest and her battery-powered nightlight casting dancing shadows on the walls. Her face was tear-streaked, but she was safe. "Hey, Princess." Daniel scooped her up, tub and all, holding her tight. "You did so good. So good. I'm so proud of you." Mia buried her face in his neck. "I was really scared." "I know, but you were so brave. You did exactly what we practiced." "Is the storm over?" "Not yet, but we're together now, so it's okay." "Who's that?" Daniel turned to find Evelyn standing in the bathroom doorway, looking profoundly out of place in her business suit in his modest home. "This is Mrs. Hart," Daniel said carefully. "She gave me a ride home from work." "Miss Hart, this is my daughter, Mia." Mia regarded Evelyn with the solemn assessment only children can achieve. "You're very pretty. Are you Daddy's friend?" "I work with your dad," Evelyn said, and her voice was gentler than Daniel had ever heard it. "Oh." Mia seemed to consider this. Then, because she was 6 and had no filter, "Are you going to stay for the storm? Daddy makes good hot chocolate. Well, it's from a packet, but it's still good." Daniel opened his mouth to make excuses, to offer Evelyn an out, but she spoke first. "Hot chocolate sounds perfect," she said. "Peut-être." The kitchen was disaster zone of flashlight beams and camping lanterns Daniel pulled from the emergency kit. He heated water on the gas stove while Mia sat at the table, wrapped in a blanket, explaining to Evelyn the complex social dynamics of first grade. And then Emma said that purple was her color, but I said colors can't belong to people. They belong to everyone. And Mrs. Chen said I was right, so Emma had to share the purple crayons, but she was mad about it. Daniel handed out mugs of cocoa, then realized he had nowhere to sit. Mia had claimed one chair, Evelyn another, and there were only 2 chairs at his small kitchen table. "I'll stand," he started. "Daddy, sit." Mia patted the chair next to her. "You're all wet. You need hot chocolate too." So Daniel sat, acutely aware of Evelyn across from him, of how surreal this entire situation was. His boss, in his kitchen, drinking packet hot chocolate while his daughter chattered on about crayons and playground politics. A massive crack of thunder made the house shudder. Mia squeaked and grabbed Daniel's arm. "It's okay," he soothed. "Just noise. Can't hurt us inside." "But what if the tree falls on our house like it did on Mr. Peterson's car?" "Our trees are strong, and we're safe." Another boom, even louder. Mia whimpered and buried her face against Daniel's shoulder. And then, glass shattering. Mia screamed. Daniel was up instantly, telling Mia to stay put as he grabbed a flashlight and ran toward the sound. The living room window had a branch through it, rain pouring in around the intrusion, glass scattered across the floor. "Damn it," he breathed. Evelyn appeared beside him, assessing the damage with the same analytical eye she brought to budget reviews. "Do you have plywood, tarp?" "Garage. But I need to—" He looked back toward the kitchen, where Mia was crying. "Go to her," Evelyn said. "I'll handle this." "You can't—" "I grew up with 4 brothers and a father who believed in DIY home repair. Point me to your tools." It was surreal watching Evelyn Hart, in a suit that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage, wade into his garage and emerge with a tarp, a hammer, and a box of nails. But she did it with the same focused determination she brought to everything else, and somehow, impossibly, Daniel believed she could actually do this. He went back to Mia, who was shaking in the kitchen. "Is the house going to fall down?" she asked in a small voice. "No, baby. It was just a window. Ms. Hart is fixing it right now." "Ms. Hart knows how to fix windows?" "Apparently." They huddled together at the table, listening to the sounds of Evelyn working in the living room, the thump of the hammer, the crackle of plastic being secured. After 15 minutes, she returned, soaked and slightly disheveled, but triumphant. "Done," she announced. "It's not pretty, but it'll hold until the storm passes." Daniel stared at her. At this woman who was supposed to be reviewing his termination paperwork, but was instead standing in his kitchen, dripping wet, having just saved his living room from flooding. "Thank you," he said, inadequate but sincere. Evelyn just nodded, pushing wet hair out of her face. "Do you have a towel, Papa?" The storm raged on through the evening. Mia's fear didn't abate. Every clap of thunder made her jump. Every gust of wind made her whimper. Daniel tried everything, reading stories, playing games, singing songs. Nothing worked. "Princess, you have to try to sleep," he said gently, but Mia clung to him. "I can't. I'm too scared. What if another tree comes through? What if the roof blows away? What if none of those things are going to happen? But what if they do?" Daniel looked helplessly at Evelyn, who had changed into a borrowed t-shirt and sweatpants that were too small but dry. She'd been sitting quietly in the corner, staying out of the way, respecting the boundaries of their moment. Now she spoke. "Mia, would it help if someone stayed with you while you try to sleep?" Mia looked at her. "You mean like how Daddy stays sometimes when I have bad dreams?" "Exactly like that." "Would you stay?" Evelyn glanced at Daniel, checking for permission. He nodded, too tired and grateful to question it. "I'd be happy to," Evelyn said. So Daniel found himself watching as his boss, settled onto the floor next to Mia's bed, holding his daughter's hand while she clutched Patches with the other. "Tell me about your dragon princess," Evelyn said softly. And Mia did, her voice growing quieter as exhaustion finally won out over fear. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching as Evelyn listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making Mia feel heard and safe. Somewhere during a description of the dragon's favorite type of flower, Mia's breathing evened out. Sleep claimed her. Evelyn stayed still, hand still holding Mia's, as if afraid to move and wake her. "You can go," Daniel whispered. "I'll stay with her." But when Evelyn tried to extract her hand, Mia's grip tightened, even in sleep. "No," she mumbled. "Stay." Evelyn froze, looked at Daniel with something almost like panic in her eyes. This was beyond any professional boundary, beyond any normal interaction. "It's okay," Daniel said quietly. "She'll let go eventually." But she didn't. And eventually, Evelyn stopped trying to leave. She settled back against the wall, Mia's small hand secure in hers. Daniel brought her a pillow, a blanket. "I'm sorry," he said. I don't even know what this is." "Unexpected," Evelyn said wryly. Then softer. "She's a good kid." "She's the best kid." The dragon princess sounds very practical. Despite everything, Daniel smiled. "Mia's big on practicality. She informed me last week that I should marry someone who's good at math because I always mess up the grocery budget." "And are you looking to marry someone good at math?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with something Daniel couldn't quite name. "I'm not looking to marry anyone," he said honestly. "I'm just trying to get through each day without screwing up too badly." Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "You're doing better than that." "Am I?" "Because most days it feels like I'm barely holding it together. Work, parenting, bills, trying to be everything to everyone, and usually failing at all of it. You're here for her. That's what matters." "Is it enough, though?" "She doesn't have a mother. We don't have family nearby. I work too much and I'm always tired, and our house has furniture from thrift stores, and sometimes dinner is cereal because I forgot to grocery shop." "Daniel!" Evelyn's voice was firm. "Look at her." He did. Mia, peaceful in sleep, secure despite the storm raging outside. "She's happy," Evelyn continued. "She's loved. That's not barely holding it together. That's succeeding at the only thing that really matters." Something in Daniel's chest loosened. Thank you for saying that. I'm just stating facts. But it felt like more than facts. It felt like absolution from someone whose opinion, for reasons he didn't want to examine, had started to matter. He should leave. Should go to his own room and let Evelyn deal with the awkwardness of sleeping on a 6-year-old's floor. But he found himself sitting down against the opposite wall instead, settling in. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Mia sleep, while the storm slowly exhausted itself outside. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said eventually. Sure. Why did you take this job? You're overqualified for it. Your work is exceptional. You could be making twice your salary somewhere else. Daniel considered the question. Flexible hours, good benefits, close to Mia's school. I optimized for time with her, not salary. But you're still on the... She stopped abruptly. On the layoff list? Daniel finished. I know, I did the math myself. Evelyn looked stricken. Daniel, It's fine. It's business. I get it. He did, genuinely. I've been preparing for it. I have a resume ready, some leads. It'll work out. It shouldn't have to work out. You're good at what you do. I also leave at 5:30 every day. I don't do drinks with clients. I don't work weekends. By corporate standards, I'm not committed enough. You're committed to what matters. Try explaining that to shareholders. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. What if there was another way? What do you mean? But she shook her head. Nothing. Forget I said anything. They lapsed back into silence, but something had shifted. Some barrier had cracked. Around midnight, Daniel's head started to nod. He jerked awake twice before Evelyn spoke softly. Sleep. I'll keep watch. You don't have to. I know. Sleep anyway. So he did, trusting this woman he barely knew to protect what mattered most to him. When he woke hours later, gray dawn light filtering through the window, he found Evelyn exactly where she'd been, still holding Mia's hand, head tilted back against the wall, in sleep. And in that moment, in the soft morning light, Daniel saw his boss for the first time as simply a person. Exhausted, rumpled, makeup long since faded, all the armor stripped away. Beautiful. The thought startled him so much he actually stood up too quickly, making the floor creak. Evelyn's eyes flew open, immediately alert. Sorry, he whispered. Didn't mean to wake you. What time is it? 6:30. Storm's over. They looked down at Mia, still peacefully asleep, still holding Evelyn's hand. Evelyn started, but Mia chose that moment to roll over, finally releasing her grip. Daniel helped Evelyn to her feet. She winced, stiff from a night on the floor. Coffee? He offered. It's the least I can do. Coffee would be perfect. They made their way downstairs in the gray morning light. The living room showed the evidence of last night's chaos. The tarp over the window, glass swept into a pile, everything slightly damp, but the house had held. They'd made it through. Daniel started the coffee while Evelyn stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the storm-damaged yard. I should call a car, she said. Get out of your way. You're not in the way. She turned to look at him, and something passed between them. An acknowledgement of the strangeness of this night, of boundaries crossed and walls lowered. Thank you, Daniel said. For everything, the drive, fixing the window, staying with Mia. You didn't have to do any of that. I wanted to, Evelyn said simply. The coffee finished brewing. Daniel poured 2 mugs, and they stood in the kitchen as the sun slowly rose, warming the rain-washed world. Daddy? Mia appeared in the doorway, patches dangling from one hand, hair a disaster. Is the storm over? All over, Princess. We made it. Mia ran to him for a hug, then surprised both adults by turning to Evelyn and throwing her arms around her waist. Thank you for staying with me, Mia said. I wasn't as scared when you were there. Evelyn looked paralyzed for a second, arms held awkwardly at her sides. Then, slowly, she returned the hug. You were very brave, she told Mia. Ms. Hart, do you want to stay for breakfast? Daddy makes really good waffles on Saturdays. Mia, I'm sure Ms. Hart needs to get home, Daniel started. Actually, Evelyn interrupted, Waffles sound wonderful. So that's how Evelyn Hart ended up at Daniel Reed's kitchen table on a Saturday morning, eating waffles and listening to a 6-year-old's elaborate stories, while something fundamental shifted in all of their lives. Neither of the adults recognized it yet. Not fully, but they would. The storm had passed, but its aftermath was just beginning. The waffles were gone, the plates stacked in the sink, and Evelyn was running out of excuses to stay. Her phone had finally charged enough to call a car service. The roads were clearing, and every professional instinct she possessed was screaming that she needed to leave before the situation became even more complicated than it already was. But Mia had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from her ordeal, curled up with patches and a blanket decorated with cartoon astronauts. And Daniel was on his hands and knees in the living room, carefully picking shards of glass out of the carpet while morning sunlight streamed through the tarp-covered window. Evelyn found herself kneeling beside him with a trash bag, gathering the larger pieces. "You really don't have to help with this," Daniel said for the third time. "I know," Evelyn replied, just as she had the previous 2 times. They worked in companionable silence, the kind of easy quiet that should have been impossible between a director and her subordinate, but somehow wasn't. Not after last night, not after everything that had happened in the space between the storm and the morning. "I need to ask you something," Daniel said finally, sitting back on his heels. "And I need you to be honest with me." Evelyn's stomach tightened. She had a feeling she knew what was coming. "The layoffs," he continued, not looking at her. "I'm on the list, aren't I?" She could lie. Should lie, probably. The list was confidential, sealed in her desk drawer, not scheduled for official announcement for another 2 weeks. But after spending the night on his daughter's floor, after seeing his life up close in all its messy, beautiful complexity, lying felt impossible. "Yes," she said quietly. Daniel nodded, still focused on a piece of glass caught in the carpet fibers. "I figured. The numbers made sense. I'm expensive, and I don't put in the hours the company values." He finally looked at her. "When?" 2 weeks. Pending final approval from corporate." "Pending your approval, you mean?" It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Evelyn was the one with final say over which names stayed on the list and which ones came off. She'd been reviewing the numbers for months, weighing costs against benefits, efficiency against loyalty, profit margins against human lives. "Yes," she admitted. "Okay." Daniel went back to picking at the carpet. "Thank you for telling me." "That's it? Just okay?" "What else is there to say? You're doing your job. I'm a line item on a spreadsheet. I get it." But Evelyn could hear the resignation in his voice, the defeat of someone who'd been fighting an uphill battle for so long that one more setback barely registered. "You have 2 months severance," she found herself saying, "and I'll make sure the recommendation letter is strong. You won't have trouble finding something else." "With my schedule requirements? Sure." Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Most companies want someone who can work late, travel when needed, be available for client dinners and weekend emergencies. I can't do any of that, not with Mia. There are family-friendly companies that pay 40% less than what I make now. I've done the math, Evelyn. I've done all the math." He threw a handful of glass into the trash bag with more force than necessary. "I'm sorry. This isn't your problem, and I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. You're making the best decision for the company. I respect that." Evelyn sat back against the wall, studying him. Daniel Reed, senior analyst, employee number 4738, cost center that could be eliminated to improve quarterly margins. That's who he was supposed to be on paper. But that's not who she'd seen last night. She'd seen a father who'd panicked when his daughter was afraid, who'd counted to calm her down, who'd made hot chocolate at midnight and read stories until his voice was hoarse. She'd seen a man who'd built a life around loving someone more than himself. "Tell me about her mother," Evelyn said. Daniel's hand stilled. "That's personal." "I spent the night in your house. I think we're past professional boundaries." He was quiet for so long that Evelyn thought he might not answer. Then, "Jessica. We met in college, got married too young, had Mia even younger. She tried. I really believe she tried. But motherhood didn't fit her vision of who she wanted to be. When Mia was 3, Jessica sat me down and said she was leaving. Not me, us. Both of us. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was honest about it. Said she'd sign away custody, pay minimum child support, and stay out of our lives if I didn't fight her for more. So I didn't. Daniel resumed collecting glass. Best decision I ever made. Mia deserves people who choose to be in her life, not people who feel trapped by obligation. Evelyn thought about her own choices, about the life she'd built on ambition and excellence and the careful elimination of anything that might slow her down. No children, no marriage, no complications, just work, success, and the cold satisfaction of being the best at what she did. Do you regret it? She asked. Choosing her over your career? Every single day, Daniel said, and Evelyn's heart sank until he continued. I regret that I have to choose it all. I regret that the world is set up so that being a good parent means being a bad employee. I regret that I can't give Mia everything she deserves because I'm too busy trying to keep a roof over our heads. But choosing her? Never. Not once. Not ever. Something cracked in Evelyn's chest, some carefully constructed wall she'd been maintaining for 15 years. I need to tell you something, she said. The restructuring plan, it's designed to maximize efficiency, eliminate redundancies, cut costs. I've been working on it for 6 months, and it's brilliant. It saves the company $8 million annually. It streamlines operations. By every metric that matters, it's the right choice. But, Daniel prompted, but I've been thinking about it wrong. Metrics aren't people. Cost centers have lives, and I've been so focused on the spreadsheet that I forgot to look at what the numbers actually represent. She met his eyes. You're exceptional at your job, Daniel. Your analysis of the Meridian acquisition saved us from a disastrous merger. Your risk assessments are consistently more accurate than anyone else's. You see patterns others miss. I also leave at 5:30. Because you have a daughter who needs you. That's not a lack of commitment. That's just a different priority. Tell that to corporate culture. What if I did? The words were out before Evelyn could stop them. What if I made the argument that keeping good people is worth more than saving a few $100,000 in salary? Daniel stared at her. You can't do that. Not for me. Not because of one night in a storm. Why not? Because it's not objective. It's emotional. And you don't make decisions emotionally. He was right. She didn't. Evelyn Hart was famous for her analytical mind, her ability to separate feelings from facts, her ruthless objectivity. Emotions were variables to be controlled, not factors to be considered. But sitting on Daniel's living room floor, surrounded by the evidence of a life lived fully despite impossible odds, Evelyn found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about what mattered. Maybe I should, she said quietly. Before Daniel could respond, Mia stirred on the couch, blinking sleepily. Daddy? Is Miss Hart still here? I'm here, Evelyn confirmed. Mia sat up, hair sticking up in 17 different directions. Good. I had a dream that you left and I didn't get to say goodbye properly. What's a proper goodbye? Evelyn asked. A hug, obviously. Mia said it like Evelyn was missing something fundamental about human interaction, which, Evelyn reflected, she probably was. So she stood up, brushed glass dust off her borrowed clothes, and accepted a hug from a 6-year-old who squeezed hard enough to crack ribs. Thank you for being nice to my dad, Mia whispered. Most people at his work aren't very nice. He doesn't say that, but I can tell because he comes home tired in a sad way, not just a regular tired way. Evelyn's throat tightened. Your dad is very good at his job. I know, he's good at everything, except cooking vegetables. He's terrible at that. Last week he burned broccoli so bad the smoke alarm went off. Mia pulled back, looking up at Evelyn seriously. If you're his boss, you should let him keep his job. We need it. Our house has a funny smell in the basement, and Daddy says we need to fix it, but that costs money. Mia, Daniel said, mortified. That's not appropriate. It's okay, Evelyn interrupted. She crouched down to Mia's eye level. I promise I'll think very carefully about what's best for your dad. Okay. Mia seemed satisfied with this answer. Do you have to go now? I do. I have some work to do. On a Saturday? That's sad. Saturdays are for fun things. What kind of fun things? Mia launched into an elaborate description of their usual Saturday routine. Library in the morning, park in the afternoon, movie night in the evening with popcorn and hot chocolate. Simple pleasures that cost almost nothing and meant everything. Evelyn's Saturdays involved emails, conference calls with the Tokyo office, and reviewing reports in her empty apartment. She thought that was normal. Now, it just sounded lonely. Her car arrived 20 minutes later. Daniel walked her out while Mia watched from the window, still clutching patches. "I meant what I said," Evelyn told him at the car door. "About reconsidering. I can't make promises, but—" "Don't," Daniel interrupted gently. "Don't compromise your professional judgment because of last night. I'll be fine. We'll be fine. We always are." But Evelyn could see the worry in his eyes, the calculation happening behind his calm exterior. How long could he cover bills with severance? How quickly could he find new work? What would he tell Mia? "Daniel, thank you for the ride last night, and for everything else. Really." He offered his hand, formal and professional, as if they could just reset to their previous relationship. As if the last 12 hours hadn't happened. Evelyn shook his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm from home repair work he did himself to save money. Then she got in the car and watched his house disappear in the rearview mirror. She had work to do. The office was nearly empty on Saturday afternoon. Just a few ambitious executives and the cleaning crew. Evelyn rode the elevator to the 14th floor, her heels clicking on marble as she made her way to her corner office with its view of the Seattle skyline. The restructuring proposal sat on her desk where she'd left it Friday afternoon. 237 pages of analysis, projections, and recommendations. 6 months of work, condensed into numbers and charts, and cold, logical conclusions. She opened her locked drawer and pulled out the list. 47 names. 47 people with lives and families and mortgages and dreams. 47 human beings reduced to positions that could be eliminated. Daniel Reed, senior analyst, annual salary $127,000, severance cost $21,166. Evelyn stared at the number until it stopped making sense. Then she opened her laptop and started doing something she'd never done before. She began questioning her own recommendations. What if she was wrong? Not about the math was irrefutable, but about what the math should be measuring. She pulled Daniel's performance reviews going back 3 years. Exceptional marks across the board. His Meridian analysis alone had saved the company from a merger that would have cost them millions. His risk assessment model had been adopted by 2 other divisions. His client satisfaction scores were in the 98th percentile. Then she looked at his hours logged. Consistently 40 hours per week, never more. Never late-night emergencies or weekend calls. He was the only senior analyst who didn't bill overtime. In corporate culture, that was a red flag. It suggested lack of commitment, lack of hunger, lack of the obsessive dedication that separated good employees from great ones. But what if it suggested something else? What if it suggested extraordinary efficiency? Daniel produced exceptional work in 40 hours that took others 60 hours to match. Wasn't that more valuable, not less? Evelyn started building a new spreadsheet. Cost of keeping Daniel versus cost of replacing him. Recruitment expenses, training time, the risk of hiring someone less competent, the value of institutional knowledge, the morale impact of losing someone respected by their colleagues. The numbers told a different story when she framed them differently. She worked through the afternoon, through the evening, until the cleaning crew had come and gone, and she was alone in a darkened office building with just the glow of her computer screen for company. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister, asking if she was coming to Sunday dinner. Evelyn stared at the message, trying to remember the last time she'd gone to a family gathering. 6 months ago? 8? Long enough that the invitations had become perfunctory, sent out of obligation rather than expectation. She typed back, "I'll be there." The response was immediate. "Really? Are you feeling okay?" Evelyn smiled despite herself. "See you tomorrow." She went back to her spreadsheet, but her mind kept drifting to Daniel's house. The warmth of it, the lived-in comfort, the evidence of love in every photograph and crayon drawing. Mia's laughter over waffles, Daniel's quiet competence in crisis. The way they'd moved around each other with practiced ease. A team of 2 against the world. That was what she was recommending be destroyed. Not just a job, but the foundation that made that life possible. Evelyn closed her laptop and stared out at the Seattle skyline, city lights reflecting off the water in the distance. She'd built her entire career on making hard choices, on prioritizing efficiency over emotion, profit over people, the good of the company over individual circumstances. It had made her successful, respected, feared. It had also made her someone who spent Saturday nights alone in an office building, whose own sister was surprised when she showed up to family dinner, who'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of something larger than quarterly earnings reports. She thought about Mia's question. If you're his boss, you should let him keep his job. We need it. Such simple logic from a 6-year-old. Such an uncomplicated view of how the world should work. Evelyn pulled up the list again. 47 names. She started researching each one the way she'd researched Daniel, looking beyond the numbers to the humans behind them. Sarah Thompson, 62, 3 years from retirement, photos of grandchildren on her desk. Marcus Chen, brilliant developer, works from home 2 days a week to care for his disabled mother. Jennifer Oakes, single mother of 3, consistently rated as the best trainer in her department. Each one had a story. Each one had people depending on them. Each one was more than just a cost to be cut. By the time Evelyn left the office, it was nearly midnight and she had completely restructured her restructuring plan. It would still save money, $6 million instead of $8 million, but it would do it through attrition, early retirement packages, and reorganization rather than wholesale termination. It would be harder to sell to corporate. It would require her to argue for the value of human capital in ways that couldn't be easily quantified on a spreadsheet. It would put her reputation on the line. But as she drove home through empty streets, Evelyn found she didn't care about any of that as much as she should have. Sunday dinner at her sister's house was chaos. 3 kids under 10, a dog that wouldn't stop barking, her brother-in-law attempting to grill chicken while simultaneously mediating a dispute over whose turn it was to set the table. Her parents were there too, delighted by the noise and disorder in a way Evelyn had never understood. "Look who finally remembered we exist," her sister Kate announced when Evelyn walked in. "I've been busy." "You're always busy. That's not new. What's new is you actually showing up." Kate studied her with the kind of thorough assessment only a sister could achieve. "You look different." "I'm wearing the same thing I always wear. Not your clothes, your face. You look, I don't know, less terrifying." Their mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. "Evelyn, sweetheart, we weren't expecting you. Let me set another place." The assumption that she wouldn't come stung more than it should have. When had she become so disconnected from her own family that her presence was surprising? Dinner was loud and messy, with multiple conversations happening simultaneously and food passed family style around a table that had seen better days. One of Kate's kids spilled juice, another one cried about vegetables, and the dog stole a piece of chicken right off someone's plate. It should have been annoying. Evelyn had always found family gatherings exhausting, all that noise and chaos when she could be working on something productive. But sitting there, watching her sister's family interact with easy affection, she found herself thinking about Daniel and Mia, about their Saturday traditions and their waffle breakfasts and the way they'd built a full life out of simple moments. "Earth to Evelyn," Kate said, waving a hand in front of her face. "You okay? You've been staring at your plate for like 5 minutes." "Just thinking. About work? About what matters?" Kate's eyebrows rose. "Okay, who are you and what have you done with my sister?" Their father laughed. "Let her be, Katie. Maybe she's finally figuring out that there's more to life than spreadsheets and board meetings." "Says the man who worked 80-hour weeks for 30 years, Evelyn shot back, but there was no heat in it. "And you know what I regret?" Her father's expression turned serious. "Missing your school plays because I had client dinners. Not coaching your softball team because I had to travel. Being too tired to pay attention when you kids wanted to tell me about your day." He looked around the table at his grandchildren. "Don't make my mistakes, Evie. Success is great, but it's cold company when you're old." The words hit harder than they should have. Evelyn had modeled her entire career after her father's, had been proud to follow in his footsteps. She'd never stopped to consider what he'd sacrificed along the way. "Did you ever think about doing things differently?" she asked. "Every day? But by the time I figured out what mattered, I'd already missed most of it." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're smarter than I was. You still have time." After dinner, Evelyn helped Kate clean up while the kids played in the living room and the men pretended to watch football. So what's really going on? Kate asked, elbow deep in soapy water. And don't say nothing. I know you better than that. Evelyn dried a plate, considering how much to share. I spent Friday night in one of my employees' homes. Kate nearly dropped the dish she was washing. You what? Not like that. There was a storm. His daughter was home alone and scared. I drove him back and ended up staying because the roads were too dangerous. She paused. And I saw his life, really saw it. And it made me question everything about how I've been doing mine. Wow, that's big. Is it crazy to reconsider major business decisions because I spent one night seeing how the other half lives? Is it crazy to remember that business decisions affect actual people? No. Kate handed her another plate. But it's definitely not your usual MO. What are you going to do? I'm going to try to save his job. And 46 others. Even though it'll make your life harder? Especially because it'll make my life harder. I think I've been taking the easy path for too long. Kate was quiet for a moment, then pulled her into a soapy hug. I'm proud of you, Evie. For what? I haven't done anything yet. For being willing to change. That's harder than you think. Monday morning came too quickly. Evelyn arrived at the office at 6, as always, and spent 2 hours rehearsing her presentation to the executive team. She'd reframed the entire restructuring proposal, built arguments for why her new approach was better long-term, prepared responses to every objection she could anticipate. At 8, her assistant knocked on her door. Ms. Hart, Daniel Reed is here. He says he doesn't have an appointment, but he was hoping you had a moment. Evelyn's stomach flipped. Send him in. Daniel entered looking like he hadn't slept well, tie slightly crooked, coffee cup gripped too tightly. I'm sorry to just show up. I know you're busy. It's fine. Sit. He sat, then immediately stood up again, too agitated to stay still. I need to say something, and I need you to hear me out before you respond. Okay? Don't take me off the list. Evelyn blinked. What? The layoffs. I know you're thinking about it. I could see it in your face when we talked on Saturday, and I appreciate it. I really do, but I can't let you compromise your professional judgment because you feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for you. Then because you felt bad about the situation, or because Mia hugged you, or whatever reason you're considering making an exception. Don't. If the math says I should be cut me. I'll figure it out. I always do. Evelyn studied him, this man who was literally arguing for his own termination out of some misplaced sense of professional integrity. Are you done? She asked. Yes, I think so. Good. Sit down. Daniel sat. I'm not taking you off the list because I feel sorry for you, Evelyn said carefully. I'm taking you off the list because keeping you makes better business sense than letting you go. I did the analysis. Your productivity per hour is 37% higher than the departmental average. Your work quality scores are exceptional. Your client retention rate is the best in the division. Training your replacement would cost more than a year of your salary, and there's no guarantee they'd perform at your level. Daniel stared at her. You can't quantify all that. I literally did. I have spreadsheets. Do you want to see them? You made spreadsheets about whether to keep me? I make spreadsheets about everything. It's kind of my thing. She pulled up the file on her computer and turned the screen toward him. See? Cost-benefit analysis that accounts for institutional knowledge, client relationships, training expenses, and productivity metrics. By every measure that actually matters, cutting you would be a mistake. Daniel leaned forward, scanning the numbers with the same focused intensity he brought to his own work. This is incredibly thorough. I'm incredibly thorough. It's why they pay me the big bucks. She closed the laptop. So you're staying, unless you're planning to quit, in which case this conversation just got very awkward. I'm not quitting. Good. Then we're done here. But Daniel didn't move. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really do this? Not the numbers. The real reason. Evelyn considered lying, keeping it professional, maintaining the walls that had served her so well for so long. But after everything, Daniel deserved honesty. Because spending one night in your home showed me that I've been measuring the wrong things for a very long time, she said quietly. I built my entire life around being excellent at my job. And I am excellent, But I'm also alone in a corner office, wondering when success started feeling like failure. She met his eyes. You have something I don't. Something I didn't even know I was missing until I saw it up close. And I'm not going to be the person who destroys that because it makes my quarterly numbers look better. The silence stretched between them, loaded with things neither of them was quite ready to name. Thank you, Daniel said finally, for seeing me, for seeing us. Thank you for letting me. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Mia wanted me to ask if you'd like to come to her school's family art night on Thursday. She's very proud of her dragon princess painting and wants to show you. Every instinct Evelyn had screamed that this was crossing a line, that she shouldn't get more involved, that maintaining professional distance was the smart choice. She ignored all of them. What time? She asked. Daniel's smile could have lit the entire city. 6:30. I'll text you the address. After he left, Evelyn sat at her desk and realized she was smiling too. Actually smiling on a Monday morning at the prospect of spending an evening at an elementary school art show. Her assistant appeared in the doorway. Ms. Hart, the executive team is ready for you. Evelyn gathered her materials, took a deep breath, and headed to the conference room to make the hardest sell of her career. Not for profit or efficiency or market share, but for people. For the quiet acknowledgement that sometimes the best business decision was the human one. The presentation took 2 hours. She faced skepticism, pushback, demands for harder numbers, and better justification. But Evelyn had been making impossible arguments her entire career. She knew how to win. By the time she walked out of that conference room, she'd saved 47 jobs and fundamentally restructured how her division approached workforce planning. She'd also committed to staying late on Thursday for a follow-up meeting, which meant she'd have to miss Mia's art show. Evelyn stared at her calendar, at the meeting that would prove to corporate that her new approach could work, at the professional obligation that should obviously take priority. Then she picked up her phone and texted Daniel. I'll be there Thursday. Wouldn't miss it. Some things, she was learning, mattered more than proving a point. Evelyn arrived at Mia's school 15 minutes early, which gave her far too much time to question every decision that had led her to this moment. She sat in her car in the parking lot, watching families stream through the main entrance, and wondered what exactly she was doing here. This wasn't a client dinner or a professional networking event. This was a 6-year-old's art show, and Evelyn had never felt more out of place in her expensive suit and heels. Her phone buzzed with an email from corporate, a follow-up question about her restructuring proposal. She started to type a response, then stopped and put the phone away. The email could wait. For once in her life, work could wait. The school hallway was chaos in the best possible way. Children's artwork covered every available surface. Parents clustered around displays pointing and photographing, teachers trying to maintain some semblance of order while clearly fighting losing battles. The air smelled like tempera paint and the industrial cleaner they used on linoleum floors. Evelyn spotted Daniel before he saw her. He was crouched down next to Mia, helping her adjust a painting that had started to droop on its display board. He'd come straight from work too, still in his shirt and tie, though he'd lost the jacket somewhere and rolled up his sleeves. Mia was wearing a dress covered in butterflies, her hair pulled into 2 braids that were already starting to come loose. Ms. Hart! Mia spotted her and came running, nearly knocking over another child's clay sculpture in her enthusiasm. You came! You really came! Daddy said you might be too busy, but I knew you'd come because you promised, and promises are important. Promises are very important, Evelyn agreed, accepting another one of Mia's bone-crushing hugs. I wouldn't miss this. Daniel straightened up, and the smile he gave her was warm enough to make Evelyn forget about the email waiting on her phone, the presentation she still needed to prepare for Monday, everything except the fact that he looked genuinely happy to see her. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. It means a lot. To both of us. Show her the dragon princess, Mia demanded, already tugging Evelyn toward her display. I worked really hard on it, and Mrs. Chen said it was very creative. The painting was exactly what Evelyn should have expected. A princess in a purple dress, standing next to a large green dragon, both of them holding books and smiling. The dragon had wings that looked more like airplane propellers, and the princess had somehow ended up with 3 arms. But it was painted with such enthusiasm that technical accuracy seemed irrelevant. Tell her the story, Mia insisted. The princess wanted to go on an adventure, Mia began, launching into what was clearly a well-rehearsed narrative. But everyone said she needed a prince to protect her. So she went to find a prince, but they were all boring, and they talked too much about themselves, and none of them liked reading. Then she met a dragon, who everyone said was scary and dangerous, but actually he was just misunderstood because people are afraid of things that are different. And the dragon liked the same books as the princess, and he could fly, which is way more useful than sword fighting, so they became best friends and went on adventures together and didn't need any princes at all. The end. That's a wonderful story, Evelyn said, and meant it. Mrs. Chen said I have a very progressive worldview for a 6-year-old, Mia announced proudly. I don't know what that means, but Daddy laughed. It means you're smart and you think for yourself, Daniel translated. They wandered through the displays together, Mia providing running commentary on each piece and the drama behind its creation. Evelyn learned about the Great Glitter incident that had resulted in art class being temporarily suspended, the boy who always tried to paint dinosaurs even when the assignment was about flowers, and the complex social politics of the communal paint supply. It was ridiculous and sweet and so completely foreign to Evelyn's usual Thursday evenings that she found herself laughing more than she had in months. There's juice and cookies in the cafeteria, Mia informed them. Can we get some, please? I've been very good and I didn't even complain when Tommy said my dragon looked like a weird lizard. Tommy sounds like he has no imagination, Evelyn said before she could stop herself. Mia beamed. That's what I told him. Daddy said I needed to be more diplomatic, but I think sometimes people need to hear the truth. Daniel covered his face with one hand. We're working on the concept of tactful honesty. I think Mia's approach has merit, Evelyn said. The world would be simpler if people just said what they meant. See, Daddy? Ms. Hart agrees with me. Ms. Hart is also the person who has to fire people for a living, so maybe she's not the best role model for workplace communication. The comment was teasing, but Evelyn felt it land anyway. She was still the person who'd almost destroyed Daniel's life with clinical efficiency. One night in a storm and a few changed spreadsheets didn't erase that. Daniel must have seen something shift in her expression because he touched her arm lightly. I was joking. Bad joke. Sorry. No, you're right. I'm not exactly known for my warm and fuzzy leadership style. You're known for being brilliant and fair. That's more important than being warm and fuzzy. Mia tugged on Evelyn's hand. Can we please get cookies now before they're all gone? Joey's mom always takes like 12 cookies, and that's not fair because the sign says 2 per person. The cafeteria was even more crowded than the hallway. They managed to secure juice boxes and cookies and found a spot at the end of a table already occupied by what appeared to be someone's entire extended family. Mia immediately began chatting with the kid next to her about their respective art projects, leaving Daniel and Evelyn in a bubble of relative quiet despite the chaos around them. This is your Thursday night, Evelyn observed, art shows and juice boxes and debates about cookie allocation. Glamorous, right? Daniel took a sip of his juice box, which seemed deeply incongruous with his work clothes. What would you normally be doing right now? Working. There's a conference call with Tokyo at 9. And you're missing it for this? I rescheduled. Daniel's eyebrows rose. You rescheduled a call with Tokyo for a first-grade art show? Apparently I did. Evelyn Hart, making personal priorities over professional ones. Someone alert the media. Don't make me regret it. Too late. You're stuck here now. Next you'll be volunteering for the spring carnival and joining the PTA. The scary thing was that Evelyn could actually picture it. Not the PTA meetings necessarily, but more of this. More Thursday nights watching Mia be proud of her dragon princess. More casual conversations with Daniel about nothing and everything. More feeling like part of something larger than quarterly earnings reports. Ms. Hart, Mia had finished her conversation and turned her attention back to the adults. Do you have kids? No, I don't. Why not? Mia, Daniel warned, that's personal. It's okay, Evelyn said. I never wanted them. I was always too focused on my career. But you could have both, Mia pointed out with the simple logic of childhood. Like Daddy has me in his job. It's harder for women, Evelyn found herself explaining. People expect different things. If your dad leaves work at 5:30 to pick you up, people think he's being a good parent, If a woman does that, people think she's not committed to her career. That's dumb, Mia declared. People should get to be good parents and good at their jobs. You're absolutely right, but the world doesn't always work the way it should. Mia considered this, swinging her legs under the table. When I grow up, I'm going to change that. I'm going to make a rule that everyone can leave work to take care of their kids, and no one will think it's weird. I hope you do, Evelyn said sincerely. Will you help me? When I'm grown up and making new rules? Daniel laughed. Mia, that's probably 30 years from now. Ms. Hart will be retired. But she could still help. You're never too old to make the world better, right, Ms. Hart? Right, Evelyn agreed, charmed despite herself by this small girl's enormous certainty about how the universe should operate. They stayed until the official program ended and the teachers started making pointed comments about needing to clean up. Walking back to the parking lot, Mia chattered about tomorrow's spelling test while Daniel listened with the focused attention he brought to everything involving his daughter. This is me, Evelyn said when they reached her car. Thank you again for coming, Daniel said. You didn't have to, but it meant a lot that you did. I wanted to. Mia launched herself at Evelyn for another hug. Will you come to my next art show? It's not until November, but it's going to be about fall, and I'm going to paint a dragon with leaves for scales. Mia, you can't just invite people to things months in advance, Daniel started. I'd love to, Evelyn interrupted, surprising herself as much as him. After they left, Evelyn sat in her car for a long moment before starting the engine. She thought about the email still waiting on her phone, about the work waiting at home, about the life she'd built that suddenly felt less like success and more like an elaborate form of hiding. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a message to her assistant. Block out the second Thursday of every month. Personal commitment, non-negotiable. If she was going to change, she needed to commit to it, and that meant making space for things that mattered, even when they didn't fit neatly into a quarterly earnings report. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm that felt natural despite being completely unprecedented in Evelyn's carefully ordered existence. She found herself eating lunch in the company cafeteria instead of at her desk, actually talking to employees instead of just evaluating their performance metrics. She started leaving the office at 7 instead of 9, which felt impossibly early until she realized she could get the same amount of work done with better focus and less exhaustion. And every few days, she'd find herself in conversation with Daniel. Sometimes it was work-related, discussions about projects or client concerns. But increasingly, it was personal, small moments stolen between meetings where they'd talk about everything and nothing. She learned that he'd wanted to be a teacher before student loans and single parenthood had made stability more important than passion. He learned that she'd grown up with 4 brothers and had spent her entire childhood proving she was just as smart, just as capable, just as worthy of attention. Is that why you're so driven? Daniel asked one afternoon when they'd both stayed late, the office quiet around them. Trying to prove yourself? Maybe, or maybe I just like winning. Those aren't mutually exclusive. No, they're not. Evelyn looked up from her computer. Do you ever resent it, having to give up teaching? Every time Mia comes home excited about something she learned, I see the impact a good teacher can have, and I think about the kids I could have reached. He shrugged. But that's not the choice I made, and dwelling on what-ifs doesn't change reality. Very practical. I learned practical the hard way. When Mia was a baby and Jessica left, I had about 3 days to completely reorganize my life. There wasn't time for what-ifs or regrets. There was just figuring out how to keep a tiny human alive while also paying rent. That must have been terrifying. It was. Still is sometimes. Every time Mia gets sick, or the car makes a weird noise, or I get called into my boss's office unexpectedly. He shot her a wry smile. Present company excluded. I'm not going to fire you, Daniel. I know, but 3 months ago I didn't know that, and the fear was real. He saved his work and closed his laptop. Do you ever get scared? About work, I mean? Evelyn considered the question. Not the way you're describing. I'm afraid of failure, of making a mistake that costs the company money or damages my reputation, but I've never been afraid of losing everything. I've always had a safety net. Must be nice. It's privileged, Evelyn corrected. And I didn't fully realize it until I saw what life looks like without that safety net. Is this your way of saying I gave you perspective? This is my way of saying you changed how I see a lot of things. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them was quite ready to name. Daniel looked like he wanted to say something, but his phone chimed with a reminder about Mia's bedtime routine, and the moment passed. "I should go," he said. "Mrs. Rodriguez has Bible study on Tuesdays, and she's probably ready to leave." "Go. Give Mia my regards. She'll want to know when you're coming over again. Fair warning. Tell her I'm working on it." After Daniel left, Evelyn sat in her office and thought about the last time she'd had plans that didn't involve work. Real plans, with people she cared about, doing things just because they wanted to. It had been so long she couldn't actually remember. She pulled out her phone and texted Kate. "Are you free this weekend? I was thinking I could take my nieces to that new animation movie they've been talking about." Kate's response was immediate. "Who is this? And what have you done with my sister?" Evelyn smiled and started looking up movie times. Saturday afternoon found her in a crowded theater with 3 overly excited children, surrounded by parents who all looked vaguely exhausted. The movie was loud and bright, and probably not as clever as the 7-year-olds thought it was, but Evelyn found herself genuinely enjoying it. Or maybe she was enjoying the way her nieces kept looking over to make sure she was watching the good parts, wanting to share the experience with her. "Aunt Evie, did you see that part?" the youngest one whispered loudly during a supposedly touching scene. "When the dragon saved the village? That was so cool." "Very cool," Evelyn agreed. After the movie, they went for ice cream, which turned into an elaborate negotiation about flavors and toppings and whether sprinkles were essential or optional. Evelyn watched Kate manage the chaos with practiced ease, herding children and making decisions, and somehow keeping everyone happy despite having completely different preferences. "You're good at this," Evelyn observed. "At ice cream negotiations?" "Years of practice." Kate handed napkins to a child who was already covered in chocolate. "You're good with them too, you know. The girls were so excited when I told them you were coming." "Really?" "Really. They think you're glamorous and important. You're like the mysterious aunt who shows up with interesting stories about the grown-up world." "I don't have interesting stories?" "You fired someone for embezzling company funds last year. To a 7-year-old, that's basically a detective show." Evelyn laughed despite herself. "I'll try to have more age-appropriate adventures. Or just keep showing up. That's the important part." Kate studied her sister. "You seem different lately, lighter, somehow." "I made some changes at work, different priorities." "Does this have anything to do with that employee whose house you stayed at during the storm?" "Maybe." "Evie, is there something happening there?" "No," Evelyn said quickly, too quickly. "He's my employee. That would be completely inappropriate." "But you want there to be something happening." "I don't know what I want. I just know that spending time with him and his daughter makes me feel like I've been missing something important for a very long time." Kate was quiet for a moment, watching her own children argue about whether mint chocolate chip was objectively the best flavor. "You know what I think? I think you've spent so long being successful that you forgot to figure out what success actually means to you. And maybe this guy and his kid are showing you a different definition." That's very insightful for someone currently breaking up an argument about ice cream. Motherhood teaches you a lot about what matters and what's just noise. Kate wiped chocolate off another small face. "Don't overthink it, Evie. If something makes you happy, let yourself have it. You've earned it." But Evelyn had built her entire life on thinking things through, on making rational decisions based on careful analysis. Letting herself want something just because it made her happy felt dangerous and irresponsible and completely terrifying. She went home that evening and did what she always did when confused. She made a spreadsheet, pros and cons of getting more involved with Daniel and Mia, risks and benefits, potential outcomes and probability assessments. After an hour, she closed the laptop in disgust. Some things couldn't be quantified. Some decisions had to be made with something other than logic. The problem was that Evelyn had spent 15 years training herself not to trust those other things. Monday morning brought a crisis that pushed all personal considerations out of Evelyn's mind. One of their major clients was threatening to leave for a competitor, citing concerns about service quality and response time. Evelyn spent the entire day in emergency meetings, reviewing account histories, analyzing complaint patterns, building a retention strategy. By 6 o'clock, she'd developed a comprehensive plan to address the client's concerns. It would require restructuring the account management team, implementing new quality controls, and assigning their best people to the account. People like Daniel. She pulled up his file, looking at his client satisfaction scores and his track record with difficult accounts. He was exactly who she needed for this. But giving him this assignment would mean longer hours, client dinners, possibly travel, all the things he'd structured his life to avoid. Evelyn sat at her desk, staring at Daniel's file, trying to figure out the right choice. The business decision was obvious. The human decision was considerably more complicated. She was still debating when her phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," she answered. "What's up?" "I need a favor." His voice was tight with stress. "And I know this is completely inappropriate to ask, but I'm out of options." "What happened?" Mrs. Rodriguez fell and broke her hip. "She's going to be in the hospital for at least a week, maybe longer. And I have that client presentation tomorrow morning that I absolutely cannot miss. But Mia's school has early dismissal for teacher training, and there's no one to pick her up, and the after-school program is full, and—" He took a breath. "Could you possibly get her? Just this once? I'll owe you forever. I'll work whatever hours you need. Daniel, stop. Of course I'll get her. What time?" The relief in his voice was palpable. 1:30. At Riverside Elementary. You're sure? Because I can keep trying to find someone else. I'm sure. Send me the details. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. I'll make this up to you. You don't owe me anything. I'll see you tomorrow. After hanging up, Evelyn looked at her calendar. She had a 2 o'clock meeting with the executive team to present her client retention strategy. She'd been preparing for it all day. It was important, potentially career-defining if she could pull off saving this account. She rescheduled it for 4 o'clock and hoped that would give her enough time to pick up Mia, entertain her for a few hours, and get back for the meeting. Riverside Elementary at 1:30 was a different kind of chaos than the art show had been. Children streamed out of classrooms shouting and laughing and comparing notes on their unexpected afternoon off. Evelyn stood near the pickup area, feeling conspicuously overdressed and out of place among the parents in casual clothes and comfortable shoes. "Ms. Hart!" Mia spotted her and came running, backpack bouncing. "What are you doing here? Where's Daddy?" "Your dad had an important meeting he couldn't miss, so I'm your backup today." Mia's eyes went wide. "Really? That's so cool. None of my friends have ever been picked up by their dad's boss before. Wait until I tell Emma. She's going to be so jealous. I'm not sure that's how jealousy works, but okay. So what are we going to do? Do you have to go back to work? Can we get ice cream? Daddy usually says no to ice cream on school days, but you're not my dad, so maybe you have different rules." Evelyn found herself smiling at the transparent logic. "Nice try, but I'm still the responsible adult here, so reasonable rules apply. However, I do have a few hours before I need to be back at the office. What would you like to do?" Mia considered this with the seriousness of someone being offered a great gift. "Could we go to the park? The one with the good swings? Daddy never has time on school days because he has to go back to work." "The park sounds perfect." They drove to the park with Mia providing running commentary on her day, the drama of who sat with whom at lunch, the injustice of only having 15 minutes of recess, the fascinating fact that caterpillars basically dissolve into goo before becoming butterflies. "That's kind of gross, but also really cool," Mia concluded. "Mrs. Chen says metamorphosis is one of nature's most amazing processes. I think if I could change into anything I wanted, I'd be a dragon. Or maybe a dolphin. Dragons can fly, but dolphins can swim really well, and they're smart. It's a hard choice." The park was nearly empty, just a few parents with toddlers and one teenager half-heartedly shooting baskets. Mia made a beeline for the swings, demanding that Evelyn push her really high, but not so high that I fall off because Daddy would be really mad. Evelyn pushed, finding a rhythm that made Mia squeal with delight. The afternoon sun was warm, the air smelled like fresh-cut grass, and for maybe the first time in her adult life, Evelyn wasn't thinking about work or obligations or the next item on her to-do list. She was just present, in this moment, with this child who'd somehow worked her way past every defense Evelyn had spent years constructing. "Ms. Hart?" Mia's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you like my dad?" Evelyn nearly stopped pushing. Of course I like your dad. He's a valued employee, and no, I mean like. The way people like each other in movies before they kiss. Mia, that's not really appropriate. It's okay if you do. I think it would be good if you liked him that way. Because he gets sad sometimes when he thinks I'm not looking, and I think it's because he's lonely. And you seem kind of lonely too, even though you're always really busy. Out of the mouths of babes, Evelyn thought. She carefully considered her response. Your dad is a good person, she said finally, and I enjoy spending time with both of you, but grown-up relationships are complicated. Why? Because of work and rules and all sorts of things that don't make sense when you're 6. That's dumb. If you like someone and they like you, you should just be together. That's what happens with the princess and the dragon. Real life is more complicated than stories. Maybe it shouldn't be. Evelyn pushed the swing higher, thinking about her conversation with Kate, about the spreadsheet she'd made and then abandoned, about all the ways she'd tried to logic her way through something that defied logic. They stayed at the park for another hour, Mia alternating between the swings and the slide, and an elaborate game that seemed to involve protecting the jungle gym from invisible invaders. Evelyn found herself getting invested in the narrative, offering suggestions for defensive strategies and questioning the invaders' motivations. You're good at this, Mia observed during a break in the battle. Daddy always wants to just defeat the bad guys, but you understand that we need to know why they're invading before we can stop them properly. Strategy is important. See? That's why you and Daddy should be together. You think about strategy and he thinks about feelings, and together you'd be perfect. Mia, I know, complicated. Mia sighed dramatically. Grown-ups make everything so hard. By the time Evelyn dropped Mia off at home, where a very grateful Daniel was waiting, she had 15 minutes to get across town for her rescheduled meeting. She made it with 3 minutes to spare, slightly disheveled, and definitely not in the focused headspace she preferred for important presentations. But when she stood up to present her client retention strategy, drawing on everything she'd learned about seeing people instead of just numbers, about valuing relationships over pure efficiency, she found the words came easily. She made her case with passion and precision, and the executive team approved the plan unanimously. Walking back to her office afterward, Evelyn realized that the afternoon at the park hadn't distracted her from work. If anything, it had reminded her why the work mattered in the first place. She wasn't saving abstract accounts. She was protecting livelihoods, families, futures, people like Daniel and Mia, who depended on the stability she helped create. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Thank you for today. Mia hasn't stopped talking about the park. She says you're officially the coolest person she knows, which is high praise from a 6-year-old. Evelyn typed back, she's a great kid. We had fun. A pause, then, would you want to have dinner with us this week? Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and probably too much talking, but it would mean a lot. This was another line, another boundary being tested. Evelyn stared at the message, thinking about all the reasons she should say no, should maintain professional distance, should protect herself from wanting something that felt increasingly dangerous. She thought about Mia's simple logic. If you like someone and they like you, you should just be together. She thought about her sister's advice. If something makes you happy, let yourself have it. She thought about her father's regrets. Don't make my mistakes. I'd love to, she typed. When works for you? The response was immediate. Friday, 6 o'clock? I'll be there. Evelyn put her phone away and went back to work. But something had fundamentally shifted. She'd spent so long being afraid of what she might lose if she let herself want more than career success. Now she was starting to realize what she'd already lost by wanting nothing else. Friday couldn't come fast enough. And for once in her carefully controlled life, Evelyn found she didn't mind the lack of control at all. Friday arrived with the kind of spring rain that felt more like a promise than a threat, soft and steady against Evelyn's office windows. She'd been distracted all day, checking her watch more often than usual, rereading the same email 3 times without absorbing its contents. Her assistant had noticed, though she'd been too professional to comment on the fact that Evelyn Hart, who never left before 7, was packing up her briefcase at 5:15. Have a good weekend, Ms. Hart, her assistant said carefully, as if testing whether this new version of her boss was permanent or just a temporary glitch. You too, Jennifer. The drive to Daniel's house felt different this time. No emergency, no storm, no crisis forcing her hand. Just a choice she was making, consciously and deliberately, to step further into a life that wasn't hers but somehow felt more real than the one she'd been living. She'd stopped at a bakery on the way, unable to show up empty-handed despite Daniel's insistence that she didn't need to bring anything. The woman behind the counter had recommended the chocolate chip cookies, mentioning they were a favorite with kids, and Evelyn had bought a dozen without admitting she had no idea what 6-year-olds liked. Mia answered the door before Evelyn could even knock, wearing an apron that was clearly meant for an adult and had been rolled up multiple times at the waist. "You're here! Daddy, she's here!" Mia grabbed Evelyn's hand and pulled her inside. "We're making spaghetti and meatballs, and I'm the official taste tester, which means I get to eat one meatball now to make sure it's good. Daddy says that's not how taste testing works, but I think he's wrong." Daniel appeared from the kitchen, also wearing an apron, a smudge of what looked like tomato sauce on his cheek. He looked more relaxed than Evelyn had ever seen him at work, comfortable in his own space, and the sight of him did something complicated to her chest. "Ignore my daughter, the professional meatball critic," he said, smiling. "Come in. Sorry about the chaos." But it wasn't chaos, not really. It was warmth and life, and the smell of garlic and basil filling a home that had been built on love instead of just money. Evelyn handed him the bakery box. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I know, but I wanted to." Mia peered into the box. "Cookies! Daddy, she brought cookies, the good kind with lots of chocolate chips. This is the best day ever." "We haven't even eaten dinner yet," Daniel pointed out. "But we're going to, and there's cookies after, and Ms. Hart is here, so it's still the best day ever." Mia stated this with the absolute certainty of someone for whom the world was still simple and good things were meant to be celebrated without reservation. Daniel met Evelyn's eyes over his daughter's head, and the look he gave her was soft and grateful and complicated with things neither of them had said out loud yet. "Can I help with dinner?" Evelyn asked. "Can you stir sauce without burning it?" "I successfully managed a division with 200 employees. I think I can handle a pot of marinara." "Those are very different skill sets, but okay." Daniel led her to the kitchen, where a large pot was indeed simmering on the stove. "Just stir occasionally and try not to let it stick to the bottom." Evelyn took the wooden spoon he handed her, acutely aware of how close they were standing in the small kitchen, of the casual domesticity of the moment. She'd attended hundreds of business dinners, elegant affairs with multiple courses and wine pairings. She'd never stirred sauce in someone's kitchen while their daughter set the table with mismatched plates and talked about the complex social dynamics of first grade. And then Emma said that purple was still her color, but I said we'd already decided colors can't belong to people. And Mrs. Chen agreed with me again, so Emma has to share the purple crayons, but she's being very dramatic about it. "Mia, breathe," Daniel interjected gently. "Let Ms. Hart get a word in occasionally." "It's fine," Evelyn said. "I'm learning a lot about the purple crayon controversy. It sounds very serious." "It is serious," Mia insisted. "Art is important and having the right colors is part of that. But sharing is also important. It's complicated." "Most important things are," Evelyn agreed, stirring the sauce and thinking about all the complicated things in her own life that she'd tried to make simple through sheer force of will and spreadsheets. Dinner was the kind of relaxed chaos that Evelyn had never experienced in her own childhood, where family meals had been formal affairs with her father quizzing them on current events and her mother correcting their table manners. Here, Mia talked with her mouth full. Daniel told terrible dad jokes that made his daughter groan, and Evelyn found herself laughing more than she had in months. "Okay, riddle time," Daniel announced. "What do you call a fake noodle?" Mia rolled her eyes dramatically. "Daddy, we've done this one like 100 times." "Ms. Hart hasn't heard it." "An impasta," Evelyn said, surprising them both. Daniel's face fell comically. "You knew that one." "I have 3 nieces. I'm familiar with the dad joke canon." "The what?" Mia asked. "All the jokes that dads tell that make kids groan," Evelyn explained. "Oh, so like all of Daddy's jokes." Mia considered this. "Do you think there's a list somewhere? Like a book of dad jokes that all dads have to learn?" "Probably," Daniel said. We get it when they give us the baby at the hospital. It's part of the official dad kit. What else is in the kit? Bad dancing skills, the ability to embarrass you in front of your friends, and an encyclopedic knowledge of how to fix things with duct tape. Mia turned to Evelyn. Is there a mom kit? The question landed harder than it should have. Evelyn saw Daniel's face change, saw him about to redirect the conversation, but she spoke first. I don't know, she said honestly. I never got one. Because you don't have kids? Because I never wanted them, or thought I didn't. Mia absorbed this with the seriousness she brought to important topics. Did you change your mind? I'm starting to think maybe I didn't ask myself the right questions when I made that decision. What were the wrong questions? Daniel laughed softly. Mia, you're like a tiny philosopher. Mrs. Chen says I ask good questions. She says questions are how we learn. Mia looked at Evelyn expectantly, clearly not willing to let the topic drop. I asked myself if I wanted to give up my career, Evelyn said carefully. If I wanted the responsibility, if I could handle it. But I never asked myself if I'd regret missing out on something important. And do you? Regret it? I'm not sure yet. But I'm learning that there are lots of different ways to be part of a family. Mia seemed satisfied with this answer. She went back to her spaghetti, swinging her legs under the table, tomato sauce somehow already on her face despite having a napkin right next to her plate. After dinner, Mia insisted they all play her favorite board game, which turned out to be a simple race game clearly designed for young children. Evelyn, who regularly outmaneuvered corporate executives in high-stakes negotiations, found herself genuinely invested in whether her game piece would make it past the candy cane forest. You're very competitive, Daniel observed when Evelyn celebrated landing on a space that let her move forward 3 spots. I like to win. I noticed. Mia, I think Ms. Hart might be even more competitive than you are. That's impossible, Mia said. I'm the most competitive person in my whole class. Tommy says it's annoying, but I think Tommy just doesn't like losing. I can relate to Tommy, Daniel muttered. They played until Mia's bedtime, at which point Daniel announced it was time for pajamas and teeth brushing. Mia immediately launched into negotiations for staying up later, but Daniel held firm with the kind of calm consistency that Evelyn was learning was his parenting superpower. Can Ms. Hart read me a story? Mia asked, clearly trying a new angle. Daniel looked at Evelyn. You don't have to. I'd like to, Evelyn said, surprising herself. So she found herself sitting on the edge of Mia's bed 20 minutes later, reading about a mouse who wanted to be a princess. Mia was already in her star-covered pajamas, hair damp from a quick bath, patches tucked under one arm. This book is kind of silly, Mia commented halfway through. The mouse wants to be a princess, but she's already brave and smart and kind, which are the best parts about being a princess. She doesn't need a crown to be those things. That's very insightful. I think when people write books about wanting to be something else, they forget that you already are things, like, I don't need to be a grown-up to be important. I'm important right now. You absolutely are. Mia snuggled deeper into her blankets. Do you think you're important, Ms. Hart? At work? Yes. I make decisions that matter. What about not at work? Evelyn paused, the book forgotten in her lap. I'm not sure. I spent a long time thinking work was the only place I needed to be important. But you're important to me, Mia said simply. And to Daddy. I can tell because he smiles different when you're here, like a real smile, not a tired smile. Your dad has a nice smile. I know, he should use it more. Mia yawned, her eyes starting to droop. Ms. Hart? Yes? I'm really glad you came over tonight, and I'm glad you got me from school the other day. And I'm glad you stayed during the storm. I'm just really glad you're here. Something in Evelyn's chest cracked wide open. I'm glad I'm here too. Do you think you could come over more? Like, maybe not just sometimes, but lots of times. I think I'd like that. Good. Mia's eyes closed completely. That makes me happy. Evelyn finished the book even though Mia had fallen asleep, unwilling to leave this moment too quickly. She studied the child's face in the soft glow of the nightlight, so peaceful and trusting, and wondered when exactly she'd let herself start caring this much. Daniel was waiting in the hallway when she emerged, leaning against the wall with a soft expression. "She's asleep," Evelyn whispered. "I heard. Thank you for reading to her." "It was my pleasure." They stood there in the quiet hallway, surrounded by Mia's artwork and growth chart and all the evidence of a life lived fully. The house had settled into evening stillness, and Evelyn knew she should probably leave, should go back to her empty apartment and her waiting emails and the life she'd built that suddenly felt impossibly lonely. "Do you want coffee?" Daniel asked. "Or wine? I have terrible wine that came in a box, but it's wine." "Box wine sounds perfect." They ended up on the back porch, a small space that overlooked a yard that needed mowing, but had a swing set and a garden box where something green was trying to grow. The rain had stopped, leaving everything fresh and new-smelling. Daniel poured wine into mismatched mugs because apparently he didn't own proper wine glasses, and they sat in comfortable silence for a long moment. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said finally, "and I need you to just listen until I'm done, because if you interrupt, I'll lose my nerve." Evelyn's heart started beating faster. "Okay. I know this is complicated. I know you're my boss, and there are about 1,000 reasons why this is inappropriate and unprofessional. I know that I'm a single parent with a mortgage and student loans and a car that sounds like it's dying. I know that your life is completely different from mine and that you have options and opportunities that someone like me can't compete with." He took a breath. "But I also know that I haven't felt this way about anyone since before Mia was born. And I know that she lights up when you're around in a way I haven't seen since her mother left. And I know that every time I see you at work, I have to remind myself why I can't just tell you all of this." "Daniel, I'm not done." He turned to face her fully. "I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not expecting you to feel the same way or to change your life or to suddenly want to be part of this chaos. I just needed you to know that this is real for me, that you're not just my boss or some professional connection. You're someone I think about when I wake up and before I go to sleep. You're someone who makes me want to be better at everything I do, and I couldn't keep pretending otherwise." The silence that followed felt enormous. Evelyn could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of this moment settling around them. She thought about all the carefully constructed walls she'd built, all the reasons she'd spent 15 years convincing herself that career success was enough. "Can I talk now?" she asked. "Please." "I've spent my entire adult life avoiding exactly this: attachment, complications, the messiness of caring about people in ways that can't be quantified or controlled." She set down her mug, hands shaking slightly. "I told myself it was because I was focused on my career, because I didn't have time for distractions, because I was too ambitious to settle down. And maybe some of that was true. But mostly, I think I was scared." "Of what?" "Of wanting something and losing it, of not being enough, of having to choose between success and happiness like those are mutually exclusive things." She laughed softly. "And then a storm forced me into your life, and I saw what I'd been missing. Not just you and Mia, but the whole idea that life could be more than corner offices and quarterly reports." "Evelyn, I'm not done either." She met his eyes. "I don't know how to do this. I've never been someone's girlfriend, never been part of a family like yours, never put my personal life ahead of my professional one. I will probably be terrible at it. I will definitely overthink everything and try to schedule spontaneity and make spreadsheets about feelings." Daniel smiled. "That sounds very on brand for you. But I want to try. If you're willing to be patient while I figure out how to be a person instead of just a professional." "I'm very patient. Ask anyone who's ever been stuck in traffic with me." "I'm serious, Daniel. This is new territory for me. I might mess it up." "Then we'll figure it out together." He reached across the space between them and took her hand, his palm warm against hers. "I'm not expecting perfect. I'm just asking for honest." "I can do honest." Evelyn squeezed his hand. "Honestly, I'm terrified right now." "That makes two of us." "Honestly, I have no idea what I'm doing." "Join the club. I'm just making it up as I go." "Honestly, I think I started falling for you the night of the storm when I saw you with Mia. The way you counted with her to calm her down. The way you put her first, always, without even thinking about it." Daniel's expression softened. "Honestly, I think I started falling for you when you fixed my window in a designer suit and didn't complain once about how ridiculous the situation was. It was pretty ridiculous. The best things usually are. They sat there holding hands, the spring evening settling around them, and Evelyn felt something shift in her chest. Not the cracking sensation from earlier, but something opening up, making room for possibilities she'd spent years pretending she didn't want. "So what happens now?" she asked. "I have no idea, but I think we should probably figure out the workplace thing first, because HR is definitely going to have opinions." "I'll handle HR." "Evelyn, you can't just—" "I can, and I will. We'll do it properly, with disclosures and ethics reviews and whatever else is necessary. But I'm not giving this up because of corporate policy." "You're going to fight corporate policy for me? For us? For the chance to see where this goes?" She paused. "Is that too much? Am I moving too fast?" "You're perfect." Daniel pulled her closer, and Evelyn went willingly, letting herself lean into this moment, this choice, this terrifying and wonderful new direction her life was taking. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Daniel told her about his dreams of teaching, about the novel he'd started writing years ago and never finished, about his fear that he wasn't giving Mia enough. Evelyn told him about her brothers, about the pressure of being the only daughter, about the loneliness of success she'd never admitted to anyone. "I should probably go," Evelyn said eventually, though she made no move to stand up. "You could stay." "Daniel, not like that. I mean, eventually like that, I hope, but I just meant you could stay. Have breakfast with us tomorrow. Mia would love it." "I don't want to confuse her. We should figure out what we're doing before we involve her more." "She's already involved. She asked me last week if you were going to be her new mom." Evelyn's heart stopped. "She what?" "I told her it didn't work like that grown-up relationships are complicated and we had to take things slow. She said that sounded boring and she was going to ask you herself." "She kind of did, at the park." "What did you tell her?" "That grown-up relationships are complicated." Evelyn smiled. "She said that was dumb." "She's not wrong." "No, she's not." Evelyn stood up, brushing off her jeans. "But I should still go. We should do this right, whatever that means. Take our time. Not rush into something because it feels good in the moment." Daniel stood too, taking both her hands in his. "Okay, but for the record, I think taking things slow is overrated." "Noted." He walked her to her car and they stood in the driveway for a long moment, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Can I see you this weekend?" Daniel asked. "Just us. No Mia. An actual date. I'd like that." "Saturday night? I'll get a babysitter. We can go somewhere nice. Or somewhere terrible. I'm honestly just happy to spend time with you without performance reviews or emergency childcare as context." Evelyn laughed. "Somewhere in the middle sounds perfect. I'll text you details." "Okay." But neither of them moved. Finally, Daniel leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away. Evelyn closed the distance between them instead, and when he kissed her, soft and careful and full of promise, she felt every wall she'd ever built come tumbling down. "Go," Daniel said when they finally pulled apart, "before I ask you to stay again and completely undermine our plan to take things slow." "Going." Evelyn got in her car, started the engine, and then rolled down the window. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "I'm really glad I drove you home that night." "Me too." Evelyn drove home through empty streets, the city quiet around her, and realized she was smiling. Actually smiling at midnight on a Friday, with no reason except that she was happy. When was the last time she'd been happy just because? Not satisfied with a successful presentation or pleased with a good review, but genuinely, simply happy. She couldn't remember. Her apartment felt emptier than usual when she got home, all clean lines and expensive furniture and absolutely no personality. She looked around at the space she'd been so proud of and saw it for what it really was, a hotel room she happened to sleep in most nights. There were no photographs on the walls, no personal touches, nothing that said anyone actually lived here. Evelyn opened her laptop, intending to catch up on emails, but found herself looking at apartment listings instead. Places with yards, houses in neighborhoods with good schools, properties that had room for more than one person, more than one life, more than just work and sleep and endless professional obligations. She was getting ahead of herself, They'd had one conversation, one kiss, no official date yet. Planning her living situation around a relationship that was barely 12 hours old was ridiculous and premature and completely unlike her usual methodical approach to major decisions. But Evelyn had spent 15 years being methodical. Maybe it was time to try being impulsive. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Got Mia down for the night. She asked if you had fun tonight. I said I thought you did. Was I right?" Evelyn typed back, "You were right. Best Friday night I've had in years." Just Friday night, not best night overall? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I've had some pretty excellent Tuesday nights. Name one. Evelyn thought about it. I'm coming up blank. That's what I thought. Sleep well, Evelyn. You too. She got ready for bed in her pristine bathroom, changed into pajamas that had never been wrinkled or stained or lived in, and climbed into a bed that was too big for one person. But instead of feeling lonely, she felt hopeful. Like this was temporary. Like change was possible. Like maybe, just maybe, she'd finally figured out what success actually meant. Saturday morning brought sunshine and a text from Kate. Mom said you actually stayed for dessert last Sunday. Who are you and what have you done with my workaholic sister? Evelyn smiled and typed back, maybe I'm trying something new. Does this new thing have anything to do with a certain single dad? Maybe. OMG, Evie, details. Later. I have work to do. On a Saturday morning, some things never change. But Evelyn wasn't working on spreadsheets or presentations. She was researching HR protocols for workplace relationships, disclosure forms, ethics guidelines. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. No secrets, no conflicts of interest, nothing that could jeopardize Daniel's position or her own integrity. By noon, she had a plan. By 2, she'd drafted an official disclosure statement. By 3, she'd scheduled a meeting with HR for Monday morning. By 4, she realized she was more nervous about her date with Daniel than she'd been about any business negotiation in her career. She called Kate. I need help, Evelyn admitted when her sister answered. With what? I have a date tonight, and I don't know what to wear. Kate's shriek was loud enough that Evelyn had to hold the phone away from her ear. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I think I just had a heart attack from shock. Don't be dramatic. You just called me for dating advice. If that's not worthy of drama, nothing is. Kate's voice softened. Okay, tell me about him. And don't say he's just an employee, or I'll drive over there and smack you. So Evelyn told her about the storm and the window and the scared little girl, about waffles and art shows and park visits, about conversations that made her question everything she thought she wanted from life, about feeling terrified and hopeful and completely out of her depth. You're in love with him, Kate said when she finished. I barely know him. You know him well enough to restructure your entire division to save his job. You know him well enough to pick up his daughter from school. You know him well enough to be calling me in a panic about what to wear. Kate paused. It's okay to admit it, Evie. Love isn't always logical. I don't know if it's love. Then what would you call it? Evelyn thought about Daniel's smile, about Mia's hugs, about the way she felt at home in their house, in a way she'd never felt anywhere else. Possibility, she said finally. I'd call it possibility. That works too. Now, about that outfit. Kate's advice had been surprisingly practical. Wear something that made Evelyn feel confident, but not like she was heading to a board meeting. After trying on half her wardrobe, she'd settled on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that Kate insisted brought out her eyes. Evelyn felt ridiculous caring about whether her eyes were brought out, but she'd kept the sweater on anyway. Daniel picked her up at 7, and the look on his face when she opened the door made every minute of wardrobe anxiety worth it. You look beautiful, he said simply. You clean up pretty well yourself. He did. Dark slacks and a button-down shirt that was nicer than anything she'd seen him wear to the office, his hair still slightly damp like he'd rushed through a shower. He held out a single sunflower, slightly crooked in its cellophane wrapper. Mia insisted I bring you flowers. She said that's what people do on dates. Then she gave me a 20-minute lecture on the importance of being a gentleman, which apparently includes opening doors and not talking with my mouth full. Evelyn took the flower, charmed despite herself. Where is she tonight? With Kate, actually. Your sister called me this afternoon and said she'd love to have Mia over for a play date with her girls. I have no idea how she got my number. She's resourceful and meddling. I'm sorry if that was weird. It was perfect. The girls are apparently planning to teach Mia about the finer points of nail polish application. Daniel offered his arm. Shall we? Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a neighborhood Evelyn had driven past 1,000 times but never stopped in. The kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles, and a menu that had been handwritten so many times the lamination was starting to peel. This okay? Daniel asked as they were seated. I know you're probably used to fancier places, but this is my favorite restaurant in the city. The owner is from Naples and she makes everything from scratch and yells at you in Italian if you don't clean your plate. It's perfect, Evelyn said, and meant it. They ordered wine that came in actual glasses this time, and food that smelled incredible, and for the first hour they talked about everything except work. Daniel told her about the novel he'd abandoned, a thriller about a math teacher who accidentally discovers a pattern in seemingly random crimes. Evelyn found herself genuinely interested, asking questions about the plot, until Daniel laughed and said she was going to make him want to start writing again. You should, she said. You light up when you talk about it. I light up when I talk about a lot of things I don't have time for. Teaching, traveling, learning to play guitar. At some point, you have to choose between dreams and reality. What if you didn't have to choose? Everyone has to choose, Evelyn. That's how life works. You chose career over family. I chose Mia over everything else. We both made our decisions. But what if the decisions weren't as permanent as we thought? Evelyn leaned forward. What if we could choose differently now? Daniel studied her across the candlelight. What are you saying? I'm saying that meeting you and Mia has made me question every choice I thought was final. I'm saying that maybe it's not too late to want different things. You want different things? I want this. She gestured between them. Whatever this is. I want Saturday morning waffles and art shows and terrible dad jokes. I want to be part of something that matters more than quarterly earnings. You're sure? Because, Evelyn, I need you to be sure. I can handle a lot of things, but I can't handle you deciding in 6 months that actually you were right the first time and career is enough. I'm not sure about anything, Evelyn admitted. But I'm sure that I want to try. That has to count for something. The food arrived, steaming plates of pasta that smelled like heaven. The owner herself brought it over, a woman in her 60s with flour on her apron and opinions about everything. Daniel, she exclaimed, where have you been? And who is this beautiful woman? Please tell me she is not just a colleague, because you have been alone too long and that beautiful daughter of yours needs a mother figure. I keep telling you this. Maria, please, Daniel said, but he was smiling. This is Evelyn. And yes, it's a date, our first official one. Maria clasped her hands together dramatically. Finally, I have been watching you come here alone for 3 years, always with your takeout containers for Mia, always so tired. And now you bring a beautiful woman, and she looks at you like you are important. This is good. This is very good. Thank you, Maria, Daniel said, clearly trying not to laugh. You, Maria pointed at Evelyn, you take care of this one, yes? He is a good man. Works too hard, worries too much, but good heart. And the little girl, she is an angel. You are lucky to find them. I know, Evelyn said softly. After Maria swept away to terrorize other diners, Daniel shook his head. I'm sorry about that. She's wonderful, and she's right. Evelyn took a bite of her pasta and nearly moaned. Oh my God, this is incredible. I told you, Maria doesn't mess around with food. They ate and talked and laughed, and Evelyn couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed a meal this much. Not because the food was exceptional, though it was, but because she was fully present in the moment. Not checking her phone, not thinking about work, not planning her next move. Just being here, with Daniel, letting herself enjoy something without analyzing it to death. Tell me about your family, Daniel said over tiramisu they'd decided to split. Your real family, not the professional biography version. So Evelyn told him about growing up as the only girl with 4 brothers, about fighting for attention and recognition, about her father's impossible standards and her mother's quiet strength. She told him about Kate's wedding where she'd cried for the first time in years. Not because she was happy for her sister, but because she'd realized she'd never have what Kate had found. "And now?" Daniel asked. "Do you still think you won't have it?" Now I think maybe I was measuring the wrong things again. I kept comparing myself to Kate, thinking I needed the big wedding and the house in the suburbs and the 2.5 kids. But maybe what I actually need is just this: someone who sees me as more than my job title, someone who challenges me to be better, someone whose kid asks me complicated questions about life and expects honest answers. That's a pretty specific set of requirements. I'm a specific person. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. "You're an extraordinary person, and I'm terrified of screwing this up." "That makes two of us." They stayed until the restaurant closed, talking until Maria physically started turning off lights around them. Outside, the spring air was cool and fresh, the city alive with Saturday night energy. "I don't want this to end," Evelyn said as they walked slowly back to Daniel's car. "It doesn't have to. We could—" He paused. "Do you want to come back to my place? Just to talk more. Mia won't be home until noon tomorrow." Evelyn knew what she should say, that it was too soon, that they should take things slow, that jumping into anything physical would complicate everything. But she was tired of should, tired of playing it safe, tired of protecting herself from possibilities. "Yes," she said. The drive back to Daniel's house felt different than all the previous times. No emergency, no obligation, just choice. They held hands across the center console, and Evelyn felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. Inside, Daniel made coffee they both knew they didn't need, and they ended up on the couch where they'd sat that first morning after the storm. Except this time, there was no professional distance, no careful boundaries. This time, when Daniel kissed her, slow and thorough and full of promise, Evelyn let herself fall completely. "Stay," he whispered against her mouth. "Not because of a storm, or because the roads are bad, just because you want to." "I want to," Evelyn said, and let him lead her upstairs. The morning sun was streaming through unfamiliar windows when Evelyn woke up, warm and comfortable in a way she couldn't remember feeling in her own bed. Daniel was still asleep beside her, one arm draped across her waist, and for a moment Evelyn just lay there, absorbing the reality of what had happened. She'd spent the night with her employee, had crossed every professional line she'd spent her career maintaining, had done exactly what she'd always sworn she'd never do, and she didn't regret it at all. Daniel stirred, blinking awake slowly. When he saw her watching him, his smile was soft and sleepy and utterly content. "Morning," he said. "Morning. Any regrets?" "None. You?" "Only that we didn't do this sooner." He pulled her closer. "We have about 3 hours before Mia gets home. Want to make pancakes?" "That sounds perfect." They cooked breakfast together, moving around the kitchen with an ease that felt like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. Daniel made coffee while Evelyn mixed batter, and they talked about nothing important and everything essential. What they liked for breakfast, what their worst jobs had been, whether superheroes or wizards were cooler. "This is going to sound crazy," Daniel said as he flipped a pancake. "But I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize that this is too complicated or too messy or too different from what you're used to." "I probably will realize all those things," Evelyn said honestly. "But I'm also realizing that complicated and messy might be exactly what I need, even when it means dealing with first-grade drama and broken windows and a car that makes concerning noises. Especially then." They were finishing breakfast when Evelyn's phone rang. Kate. "How was the date?" her sister demanded without preamble. "And before you give me a boring summary, know that Mia has been grilling me about whether you and her dad are going to get married, so I need details." Evelyn looked at Daniel, who was clearly trying not to laugh. "It was good, really good. Good enough that you're calling me back at 10 in the morning instead of being at the office?" "I'm actually at Daniel's. We made pancakes." Kate's squeal was loud enough that Daniel could hear it across the kitchen. "Evelyn Hart made pancakes at a man's house on a Sunday morning. I'm calling Mom right now, but—" "Don't you dare. I'll tell you everything later. When are you bringing Mia back?" "Noon, but I can keep her longer if you need more time for pancakes." "Noon is fine. And Kate? Thank you for helping with this." "That's what sisters are for." Well, that and embarrassing you at family dinners by telling this story for the rest of your life. After hanging up, Evelyn realized she was nervous about seeing Mia, which was ridiculous because she'd seen Mia dozens of times. But this felt different. This felt like the beginning of something real, something that would affect all three of them, and she didn't want to mess it up. She's going to know, Daniel said quietly. Mia has a sixth sense about these things. What do we tell her? The truth, that we like each other, that we're trying to figure this out, that nothing is changing right now, but maybe someday things will be different. That's very diplomatic. I've been practicing in my head since yesterday. Mia arrived home at noon exactly, bursting through the door with stories about nail polish and movies and the complex dynamics of third-grade girls that she'd learned from Kate's daughters. And they said that boys are gross, but I said some boys are okay, like the ones who share their snacks, and they agreed that sharing makes people less gross, and we made a chart about it. She stopped mid-sentence, looking between Evelyn and her father with narrowed eyes. Why are you both smiling weird? We're not smiling weird, Daniel protested. Yes, you are. You're smiling like when I draw you a picture and you're trying not to cry because it's so beautiful, but also kind of messy. She gasped. Did something happen? Did you go on your date? Did you kiss? Emma's mom said that kissing is how you know if you like someone for real. Mia, Daniel started. We did go on a date, Evelyn interrupted, and it was really nice. And yes, we like each other for real. Mia's face lit up like Christmas morning. So does that mean Ms. Hart is your girlfriend now? Daniel looked at Evelyn, clearly leaving the answer to her. Evelyn thought about all the reasons she should hedge, should keep things vague, should protect herself from commitment. Yes, she said instead, if that's okay with you. Okay? It's the best thing ever! Mia threw herself at Evelyn, nearly knocking her over. I knew it! I told Daddy weeks ago that you should be together, and he said it was complicated, but I knew you just needed to figure it out. You're very wise, Evelyn said, hugging her back. I know. Can we have pancakes to celebrate? We already had pancakes for breakfast, Daniel said. But these are celebration pancakes. They're different. Please, 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 please. Daniel looked at Evelyn, who shrugged. I could eat more pancakes. So they made another batch, and Mia talked nonstop about all the things they could do now that Evelyn was officially part of their family. Movie nights and park days and maybe getting a dog because Emma had a dog and dogs were great for families. Let's maybe slow down on the dog, Daniel suggested. We're still figuring things out. But dogs make everything better. So do pancakes, and we're having those right now. Evelyn watched them negotiate, feeling something settle in her chest. This was what family looked like, not perfect or coordinated or straight out of a magazine, just real people having real conversations about pancakes and dogs and what mattered. Later, after Mia had been convinced to play in her room for a while, Daniel and Evelyn sat on the back porch again. Are you really okay with this? Daniel asked. With Mia knowing? With everything moving so fast? I'm terrified, Evelyn admitted, but I'm also happy. And I haven't been actually happy in so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like. We still need to figure out the work situation. I have a meeting with HR tomorrow. I'm going to officially disclose the relationship and transfer your reporting structure so you don't report to me directly anymore. It'll be cleaner that way. You've already thought this through. I'm very good at thinking things through. It's kind of my superpower. What if they say we can't do this, that it's a conflict of interest? Then I'll handle it. But Daniel, I need you to understand something. She took his hand. I'm not giving this up. I'm not giving you up. If it comes down to choosing between my job and this, I'll choose this every single time. Evelyn, I can't let you sacrifice your career. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing. For the first time in 15 years, I'm choosing something that isn't about advancement or achievement or proving I'm the best at what I do. I'm choosing happiness. I'm choosing you. Daniel pulled her close, and they sat there in the afternoon sun, planning a future that was uncertain and complicated and absolutely worth it. The HR meeting on Monday went better than expected. The disclosure was accepted, Daniel's reporting structure was changed, and while there were some raised eyebrows and pointed questions about professional judgment, nobody could argue that Evelyn hadn't followed protocol. The harder part was telling her team. Evelyn had built her reputation on being untouchable, unemotional, purely professional. Admitting that she'd fallen for someone who worked for her felt like showing weakness. But when she gathered her senior staff and explained the situation, the response surprised her. "It's about time," Sarah Thompson said, and everyone laughed. "You've been different these last few months," Marcus Chen added. "Better. More human. If this relationship is why, then I'm all for it." Even her assistant, who'd witnessed every iteration of Evelyn's professional persona, seemed pleased. "You deserve to be happy, Ms. Hart. And if I may say so, you seem lighter lately, like you're not carrying quite so much weight." Over the following weeks, Evelyn and Daniel figured out how to balance their relationship with work. It wasn't always easy. There were times when they disagreed about projects, times when they had to be extra careful about perception, times when Evelyn had to remind herself that she couldn't give Daniel preferential treatment just because she loved him. Loved him. The realization had hit her one Tuesday evening when she'd stopped by their house after work and found Daniel helping Mia with math homework with infinite patience, despite clearly being exhausted. She loved him. Not despite the complications or the challenges, but because of how he handled them. Because of who he was when nobody was watching. Because of the life he'd built for his daughter against impossible odds. She told him that night, after Mia was asleep, standing in his kitchen doing dishes because that's apparently what people in relationships did. "I love you," she'd said, handing him a plate to dry. "I know it's probably too soon and I'm supposed to play it cool, but I'm terrible at playing it cool about things I care about." Daniel had dropped the plate back in the sink, pulled her close, and kissed her until she couldn't remember why she'd been worried about timing. "I love you too," he'd said. "I have since the moment you fixed my window in the storm without complaining once about how ridiculous the situation was." "That was months ago." "I know. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. You could have just said it. I was waiting for the right moment." Apparently the right moment is while doing dishes. The most romantic of activities. "I'll make it up to you. Dinner tomorrow? Somewhere nice? Or we could stay here. I'll cook. We can have another pancake breakfast, but for dinner." Breakfast for dinner with you sounds better than the fanciest restaurant in the city. And it had been. They'd made pancakes and eggs and bacon while Mia helped and made a mess and told them about the ongoing purple crayon drama that apparently would never end. They'd eaten at the kitchen table and played board games, and Evelyn had tucked Mia into bed while Daniel cleaned up. It had been perfect in its imperfection. 3 months later, Evelyn moved into a house 2 blocks from Daniel's. Not into his house because they both agreed that was too fast, but close enough that Mia could walk over whenever she wanted. Close enough that they could have family dinners most nights. Close enough that this felt real and permanent and right. 6 months after that, Evelyn found herself standing in her bathroom staring at a pregnancy test and wondering how her life had changed so completely in less than a year. She'd been so certain she didn't want children, had spent decades building a life around that certainty. And now, looking at those 2 pink lines, she felt terrified and thrilled and completely unprepared, but also ready. She told Daniel that night after Mia was asleep, watching his face cycle through shock and joy and wonder. "Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. "I'm terrified. A baby at this stage of my life wasn't exactly in the plan. But Evelyn, I'm also so happy I can barely breathe. We're going to have to tell Mia. She's going to be impossible. She's been asking for a sibling since before we even started dating. She's going to want to name it. Absolutely." Get ready for suggestions involving dragons and princesses and probably some characters from whatever book she's currently obsessed with. They told Mia the next morning over pancakes because apparently every major life event in this family happened over pancakes. "A baby?" Mia shrieked. "A real baby? That I get to help take care of and teach things to and show my dragon princess to?" "Yes to all of that," Evelyn said. "This is the best day of my whole entire life. Can I tell Emma and my teacher and everyone I've ever met?" "Maybe wait until after breakfast," Daniel suggested. But Mia was already planning, talking about how she'd teach the baby to read and to stand up for themselves and to share the purple crayons even when they didn't want to. "I'm going to be the best big sister ever," she announced. "Even better than Emma's sister. And she's pretty good, but she's kind of bossy, so I'll be better." Evelyn met Daniel's eyes across the table, and they both tried not to laugh at their daughter's absolute certainty about everything. Their daughter. When had she started thinking of Mia that way? probably somewhere between the art shows and the bedtime stories and the complicated conversations about life. Mia had worked her way into Evelyn's heart so completely that sometimes she forgot there had ever been a time when this little girl wasn't part of her life. The pregnancy was harder than Evelyn expected. Morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that no amount of coffee could touch, mood swings that made her cry during conference calls for no apparent reason. But Daniel was patient and Mia was helpful in her enthusiastic 6-year-old way, and Evelyn learned to accept help instead of insisting she could handle everything alone. She also learned to delegate at work, to trust her team, to accept that she didn't have to be perfect to be effective. Her division's performance had actually improved since she'd started prioritizing balance over burnout. Turned out that treating employees like humans instead of resources made them more productive and loyal. Who knew? 7 months into her pregnancy, Daniel proposed, not at some fancy restaurant or elaborate event, but on a random Tuesday evening when they were all eating takeout Chinese food because nobody had energy to cook. "Marry me," he said, right in the middle of Mia's story about recess. Evelyn looked up from her lo mein. "What?" "Marry me. I know this isn't romantic, and I don't have a ring yet, and Mia is right here eating spring rolls, but I can't wait anymore. I want to marry you. I want us to be a real family, officially. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fight over bathroom time and argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. I want all of it, forever." "Daddy's proposing," Mia whispered loudly. "This is so romantic. Say yes, Miss Hart. Say yes." "First of all, you can probably start calling me Evelyn now," Evelyn said, her eyes wet. "And second, yes. Obviously yes." Mia cheered loud enough that the neighbors probably heard, and Daniel kissed Evelyn over the container of lo mein, and it was perfect precisely because it wasn't perfect. They got married 3 months after the baby was born. A small ceremony in Kate's backyard with Mia as the flower girl and both of their families and close friends in attendance. Evelyn wore a simple white dress that accommodated her post-pregnancy body. Daniel wore a suit that Mia had helped pick out, and their son Noah slept through the entire ceremony in his grandmother's arms. "I can't believe this is my life," Evelyn said during their first dance, which was more of a gentle swaying because they were both exhausted from new parenthood. "Having regrets?" Daniel teased. "Not even a little. Although I do regret not bringing extra diapers because Noah is definitely going to need a change soon. That's my practical wife. That's going to take some getting used to. We have plenty of time." And they did. They had lazy Sunday mornings and chaotic weekday dinners and bedtime routines that involved 2 kids and a lot of patience. They had arguments about money and parenting and whose family to visit for holidays. They had sleepless nights and moments of doubt and days when everything felt too hard. But they also had each other. They had Mia teaching Noah about dragons and sharing and the importance of asking good questions. They had Kate's kids treating Noah like their own little cousin. They had family game nights and pancake breakfasts and traditions that grew organically from just living life together. 2 years after the wedding, Evelyn stood in the kitchen of the house they'd finally bought together. Bigger than Daniel's old place, but still in the same neighborhood, close to good schools and the park with the good swings. She was making pancakes while Mia helped Noah stack blocks in the living room and Daniel got ready for work. It was Thursday morning, nothing special, just another regular day in their regular life. But as Evelyn flipped pancakes and listened to her children laugh and felt Daniel's arms wrap around her from behind, she realized this was everything she'd been missing during all those years in corner offices and empty apartments. "Happy?" Daniel murmured against her neck. "Deliriously." "Good. Because Mia wants to get a dog, and I told her she had to convince both of us, so prepare yourself for a PowerPoint presentation at dinner tonight." "She's making a PowerPoint? She's 8. She learned it from you. You've created a monster." Evelyn laughed, leaning back against him. "I'll consider the dog if she includes a proper budget analysis." "Deal." They stood there for a moment, just being, while pancakes cooked and kids played and life happened all around them. This was success, Evelyn thought, not the corner office or the quarterly reports or the professional accolades. This warm, chaotic, imperfect, absolutely beautiful life they'd built together. The storm that had brought her to Daniel's doorstep felt like a lifetime ago, but also like yesterday. Like the universe had known exactly what she needed and had quite literally blown her into it. Ms. Hart, I mean Evelyn, Mia called from the living room. Noah knocked over my blocks again. Because you built them too close to him, Evelyn called back. But he needs to learn to respect other people's buildings. He's 2. He's still learning not to eat crayons. Daniel kissed her temple. Welcome to parenthood, where every morning is an adventure and negotiation, and every night you wonder how you survived the day. And yet, I wouldn't change a thing. Not even the part where Mia put glitter in my hair gel last week? Okay, maybe that part. They served pancakes to their family, these people who'd become her whole world when she hadn't even known she was looking for one. Mia talked about her school project. Noah babbled happily while covering himself in syrup, and Daniel caught Evelyn's eye across the table with a smile that still made her heart skip. This was it. This was what mattered. Not the empire she'd built or the success she'd achieved, but this table and these faces and this life they were creating together, one imperfect pancake breakfast at a time. Later, after Daniel had left for work and Mia for school and Noah for his playdate, Evelyn stood in her kitchen and looked at the photos on the refrigerator. Mia's art from school, Noah's first steps, their wedding day, the 4 of them at the beach last summer. Her phone buzzed with a work email, something about the quarterly review that needed her attention. She glanced at it, made a mental note to handle it later, and put the phone away. Work would always be there. These moments, these people, this life she'd almost missed by being too focused on the wrong things, these wouldn't wait. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, sleeping in that guest bathroom, confused and disoriented in someone else's life. That woman had been successful by every conventional measure. That woman had also been lonely and lost and missing everything that made life worth living. Evelyn didn't miss her, because that storm, that terrible, wonderful storm, had swept away more than just broken tree branches and shattered windows. It had swept away every assumption she'd built her life on. It had forced her to see what really mattered. It had brought her here, to this kitchen, to this life, to this family she'd never known she was building. The window that Daniel had fixed that night was still there, no longer covered with a tarp, but properly repaired with new glass. Every time Evelyn looked at it, she remembered that night, the fear in Mia's voice, the determination in Daniel's eyes, the moment she'd decided to stay instead of running back to her safe, empty life. Best decision she'd ever made. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Daniel. Forgot to tell you I love you this morning. Fixing that now. I love you. See you tonight. Evelyn smiled and typed back, love you too. And yes, we can discuss the dog situation, but Mia's presentation better be good. She's been working on it for 3 days. It's 30 slides long. That's my girl. Both of them are your girls. You know that, right? Evelyn's eyes got misty, which happened embarrassingly often these days, but she'd learned to accept it as part of who she was now, someone who felt things, someone who let herself be vulnerable, someone who'd traded control for connection and had never looked back. I know, she typed. See you tonight. I'll make your favorite for dinner. Pancakes? We literally just had pancakes. Your point? Evelyn laughed out loud in her empty kitchen, and the sound echoed off walls that had known laughter before, but never quite like this. Never quite this full of joy and possibility and the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. That night, after Mia's impressively thorough PowerPoint presentation about the benefits of dog ownership, after Noah's bath time battle, after the dishes were done and the house had settled into evening quiet, Evelyn and Daniel sat on their back porch and watched the stars come out. Did you ever imagine this? Evelyn asked. 3 years ago, when I drove you home in that storm? I imagined that you'd drop me off and I'd never see you again outside of work meetings where you'd barely remember my name. Daniel pulled her closer. I definitely didn't imagine this. Me neither. I had a whole life planned out. It was very neat and organized and completely empty. And now? Now it's messy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Even with the potential dog situation? Especially with the potential dog situation. Mia's presentation was actually pretty compelling. She inherited your ability to argue a point, and your stubborn refusal to give up on things that matter. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from truly knowing someone, from building a life together day by ordinary day. Evelyn thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that first desperate drive through flooded streets, to this peaceful evening in their own backyard. She thought about all the things she'd learned, that success wasn't about how high you climbed, but about who you climbed with. That strength wasn't about never needing help, but about knowing when to accept it. That love wasn't a distraction from living, but the whole point of it. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being patient with me while I figured all this out, for not giving up when I was too scared to admit what I wanted, for showing me what a real life looks like." "You figured it out yourself. I just provided the chaos and the 6-year-old with opinions about everything." 8-year-old now. Time flies when you're constantly negotiating about dogs and bedtimes and whether broccoli is actually necessary for human survival. Evelyn laughed, then grew serious. "I mean it, Daniel. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions, checking boxes on someone else's definition of success. You and Mia showed me what it means to actually live. And you showed us that our little family could be bigger, that there was room for more love, more possibilities, more pancakes. Always more pancakes. It's practically our family motto at this point." Inside, they heard Noah start to fuss through the baby monitor, and Mia's voice talking to him softly, singing one of the lullabies Evelyn had taught her. Their daughter, taking care of their son, in their house, in their life. "I should get him." Evelyn started to stand. "Let Mia try. She loves being the big sister." So they sat and listened to their daughter sing their son back to sleep, and Evelyn felt so full of love she thought she might burst with it. This was her life now. Not the one she'd planned, not the one she'd thought she wanted, but the one she'd chosen when a storm had literally blown her into it. The one she'd built with this man and these children and countless small moments of choosing love over fear, connection over control, messiness over perfection. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled softly, a spring storm rolling in. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. Storms had brought her here, to this porch, to this family, to this life that was more than she'd ever let herself dream possible. She leaned into Daniel's shoulder and watched the lightning dance on the horizon, grateful for every storm she'd weathered, every wall she'd torn down, every fear she'd faced. Because on the other side of all that rain and thunder and uncertainty was this, was home, was family, was love in its most complicated and beautiful form, and she wouldn't change a single thing. The storm that night was gentle, just enough rain to make the garden grow, just enough thunder to remind Evelyn where they'd started. And in the morning, there would be pancakes. There were always pancakes. And there would be laughter and chaos and the beautiful ordinary moments that made up a life well lived. But for now, there was just this, the porch and the stars, and the man she loved, and the children sleeping safely inside, and the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Finally, completely, perfectly home.